Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. We have a regular Selectmen's meeting, and also at 7:15 we have a public hearing for Green ER special permit application for a water supply protection overlay district. So first off, we have a presentation by Turning Point Technologies on wireless voting clickers for a town meeting. I asked for this presentation because I had several people reach out to me following the last couple town meetings with different concerns on both sides. Some are simply peer pressure concerns, they're mostly peer pressure concerns, and I think this might be a good way for us to go forward to have people so they can have peace of mind voting, a little bit of privacy, and everyone would still be able to stand up and nationally oppose or support any issue. That won't change that. This would be strictly for when it comes time to vote in town meeting. So take it away, sir.
Just real quick, I just wanted to announce to you two that we do have a resource that's helping us out for this Selectmen meeting as well as the planning board meetings temporarily until we find a permanent individual to take over the spot for Caleb. So we'll be going live tonight and moving forward.
Great.
I want to hand it over to Greg Alexander from Turning Point Technologies.
Thank you, Susan.
My name is Greg Alexander. I'm from Turning Technologies. We're going to talk a little bit about electronic voting. Everyone up here at this table, I believe, has a response card, keypad. You'll be able to vote. There are a few select folks out there. I only had 27 devices with me. When a motion shows on the screen, you simply press the button that corresponds with the answer that you want to give, with the vote you want to cast. And then when the polling closes, we'll be able to see the votes immediately in real time. I have a couple of just trivia questions to kind of test it out before we go to one of the motions, or two of the motions from your most recent town meeting. Wellesley was originally settled as part of Dedham. Oh, you know what? Did I open the wrong one? No. You guys aren't going to know that. I'm not sure how I got that question. You're going to say 1 for yes, 2 for no. You can see up here the votes are coming in, 7 people, 10 people, there's 27, as I said, clickers out there. There is a countdown timer that will appear on each voting slide, so the moderator would be able to call for that. We can set that to any length of time. I set it at 10 seconds. You've got 2 seconds to get your answer in. There we go, 70% said yes. The answer is actually yes. Next question. Defacing a milk carton in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is punishable by a $20 fine. I think that's true. So 1 for yes, 2 for no. As you're voting, 1 is typically yes, 2 is going to be no. That's why I use those in setting these up. 10 seconds, get it locked in. 22. 23. And once it gets to 0, we see the result. 57% said no. That actually is the correct answer because it's a $10 fine.
So do you see it counting down? Because I didn't see that.
All I can see is the number of responses up here, and then right over in here is where that countdown timer was.
Okay.
And so as the timer counts down, and again, we can determine what that timing needs to be. The moderator typically says that. I have it tied to advancing the slide. It's a PowerPoint slide, so it's an object that we advance and it activates.
What's the average countdown time, do you find?
Some moderators want to have 30 seconds for every vote, and the timer kicks on right when the vote opens. Some do like what I've just done, where maybe we give a few seconds, we see the votes coming in, and we decide, okay, and the moderator will say, okay, go ahead and start the timer, and we'll activate it, and then they've got 10 seconds from there. So it really, it's personal to every town. So again, what I've done here, just from a voting standpoint, I took the first 2 articles from the warrant from last fall's town meeting. I don't think either of those were the contentious articles that you guys dealt with, but you can kind of see how it would work for an actual vote. And again, this can be customized any way you want. I've included the language of the article on just a standard PowerPoint slide here, so that there can be some discussion around that article. And then for the motion, I simply put Article 1 motion. I did include down here, this article requires a majority vote, or majority, 2/3, whatever the case might be. Some towns want to have the language of the motion show up on the voting slide. That can be done. The thing that happens is if there's an amendment to that motion or that article, then someone has to be typing, and it's just, however fast you can type on a PowerPoint slide is how fast it's going to take place, but they're waiting for the town council to approve the language as they're typing it out. So I know in the town of Westwood, when I dealt with them, they actually had a little note on there about the Board of Selectmen or FinCom, and if it was unanimously approved by those folks, or how they really are recommending for the town to vote. So I did not include that here, but again, all of this can be customized to your own town meeting. So here, and this I should have included something because I don't remember now what Article 1 was, but we'd have 10 seconds left. We've only got 4 votes at this point. So if we want a few more people to vote yes or no on Article 1, it's to 0. We can see 53% to 47%, so this one would carry. We can actually look at the raw count in addition to the percent, so that can be set up initially. We can toggle between the two. Typically the town clerk is going to need to have both numbers, is what in my experience working with different towns. And then the second was just to see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $9,940 from free cash to purchase and install a repeater cabinet or act in relation thereto. This was for the chief of police. So that article would be voted upon. Start the countdown timer. As it counts down, closes out the voting, and we see the result. Now this one I put 2/3. I think this required a majority, but I just put 2/3 so you could see that the difference between the two. So this one would carry by far as well. I just wanted to show you quickly, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time today other than answering questions, but the way that our technology works, it's simply added into Microsoft PowerPoint, which is a presentation software. Normally in PowerPoint from Microsoft, you've got these tabs up here. Turning Point is one extra tab or toolbar. So if I have a voting slide that I want to create, I would use the Turning Point ribbon. It's a multiple choice question slide. Type the language that I want for the question. Type a yes, a no, click outside that box, and that's a basic voting slide. I mean, that's how simple it is to use this technology. Most of the towns that I work with, there's 11 towns currently. I can show this list. I don't know how easy it is going to be for most of you to read it. It's in a Word document that I have available. But Avon, Belmont, Dover, Falmouth, Linfield, Rockport, Stoughton, Webster, Westwood, Whitman, and Winchendon are the towns that we work with currently. I'm in conversations with at least 5 or 6 other towns currently. Most of them own, I think we determined 4 of the 11 are renting right now. We offer both options, so just depending on what makes the most sense. But when those that own it, they run it themselves, and so they don't have to be worried about the cost of hiring someone to come in and run it for them because it is so simple. The other thing that I typically will advocate, electronic voting is not it's not a big market for us. I mean, our largest market is training, higher education, colleges and universities. I only work with government entities, local, state, federal, and DoD, and typically our tool is used in a training environment. Electronic voting was something we kind of got pulled into because someone just called us and asked us about it, and now we're working with 11 towns. So if you do decide at some point that you want to own a Turning Point system, I would very strongly urge you to use it in other areas. I work with a lot of towns that use this in the Agency on Aging or in the Youth Commission. They'll use it for police and fire and EMS training, or the Human Resource Department for the town when they're conducting sexual harassment prevention training or safety training in public works. All kinds of different areas where this tool, because you only have town meeting twice a year, typically, right? So why invest in something and own it, have it sit on the shelf for 11 and a half months out of the year and just pull it out and dust it off only for town meeting? So I'm open to questions. I guess I should tell you there are reports that can be run from this, so the town clerk will have documentation of all the voting that has taken place. It's available immediately upon closing each vote. I come in here and I can see each vote that was held and the outcome. There's other reports that could be run from that data as well. From a security standpoint, each of those devices that you're using to vote has a unique device ID. The software is only gathering the device ID and the vote that has been cast. So we have no way of tracking that back to you as an individual. If you're in a representative style town meeting, we would assign the device to the representative so that we could track that particular representative. But in this situation, you'd come in, you'd check in for town meeting, and the volunteer there that's checking you in would hand you, most people call it a clicker. Okay? So you'd get your clicker, you go into town meeting, you can cast your votes, and when you exit town meeting, you toss it into a box, and you're done. It's pretty much that.
Question.
Yes.
Do these have different frequencies that you can set?
We have
them
different
on?
channels that are available. It's all on the 2.4
Because
gigahertz
you just hit on a
frequency.
salient point. You pick it up, but what if you forget to put it back? Now you come to the next town meeting, now you
That-
get two of them. Do you have two
And
votes?
that's where,
You gotta
no,
change it
yeah, see,
somehow,
and that's
right?
where with the device IDs, I would set it such that only the devices that are being passed out
Thank
can
you.
cast a vote.
That's
So
what
there
I
is no,
wanted to hear.
because this is, I mentioned higher education is our largest market. Boston University, Harvard University, they both use Turning Point in their schools. So the students go into a bookstore, they buy a clicker, you don't want them to be able to come to your town meeting and cast a vote if they're not a registered voter. So you only allow those devices that are being distributed for town meeting to be collected.
So, I have a couple questions. How are you prevented from casting more than one vote?
Because the software is only allowing, it's only receiving one vote from you. If you
Right.
push that more than once, it's only accepting one vote and it's the last vote you cast. So, and I didn't really go through that description very well, but if I'm voting yes, and while the vote is still open, I change my mind. I decide, no, I'm gonna change it and go no. All I have to do is hit the 2 button. Now my vote is no, and it's the last vote that I cast before the polling is closed.
So
That's what's accepted by the software. So you can change your vote as many times as you want. You can hit the button as many times as you want. You're not skewing the
Inside 10
results.
seconds.
Right.
And then how about, I know this is probably something that you have to watch, but say we come into town meeting and everybody gets one of these cards,
Mhm.
and I don't really know how I really want to vote on this, and I give like it to him. Can he have 2 votes?
That, yeah, and that tends to be, it has to be citizen police, basically. I mean, if somebody's sitting around near you and they see that happen, then they need to do something, say something, basically. That's a good point.
And what about being hacked? Is it possible somebody to hack into the software?
No, I mean, our software, it's a proprietary RF communication that we're using because we're only allowing those device IDs that are being distributed to be, to be collected by the software, so that there's not going to be any way to hack it unless they had one of those devices. And the only way they can get that device is when they register to attend town meeting. We're by far the largest provider of, this is an audience response system, is what it's typically called. We provide for 60 or 70% worldwide of the market. We were the first to come out with the little smaller devices. Our founders were with another company and they wanted to bring the cost down and they wanted to make it more portable. We've been through all of the iterations. It's all trademark technology as far as the communication taking place from the device to the receiver. When you see on your device, you may have noticed when you press a button, it'll say 1/A or 2/B in the little LCD window on the face. That is actually my computer sending a signal back to your device saying this is the vote that I got from you. So it's a two-way communication that's taking place here, and that confirmation is to assure that the vote that you cast is the vote that we received in the software.
So we have a lot more than yes and no on here. Can people accidentally turn them off or switch them, like
If-
the channel button or the
If
question
you,
button?
here, I don't have a countdown timer on this slide, I'm just gonna go ahead and open it up. So if you wanna go ahead and hit a 3 or a 4, if you hit something that's not actually a valid, because the only votes that we're accepting are A and B or 1 and 2, right? So those are the only ones that will be accepted. If you hit something other than that, it's going to show a little circle with a line through it, and it'll have a red light blink on the face of the device, where if you're hitting the 1A, 2B, it'll actually show up on the LCD screen. And again, you can press different buttons and you'll see different display on the LCD window. And then when I finally close the
Close the
polling,
vote.
that's when that last vote you cast is the one that is being displayed and being collected.
Very good.
And how long are these good for on their battery?
There's two CR2032 batteries, the little coin cell batteries. We typically say they're 1 year, but I mean, if you're only using them a couple times a year, like Belmont's been using them for 5 years now, and I think we replaced batteries in 5 or 10 of their clickers, maybe before their
Or
last
if you
fall
rent, that
time.
would be.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
How about cost?
Cost, the device is in the $39 per device, and then there is an annual subscription for the, it's a seat license model that we've adopted rather than licensing the
Say
software.
if we wanted to rent 400 for
Yeah,
a
if
town
you're
meeting.
renting 400, 695, I don't deal with rentals, but
I have those numbers, I
yeah.
think, from before when I got the quote for you.
695, and then there'd be another 350 times $4, so somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000.
How often does the technology change?
The software changes, the clickers have not. I've been with Turning Technologies for 13 years now. When I first started, we had a device very similar to that without the LCD window. Probably 2 years later, about 10 or 11 years ago, we introduced this device, and it's never changed. We do offer, in addition to the clickers, people nowadays are using smartphones. The reason that we don't advocate smartphones, it won't work in electronic voting because it's not secure. I mean, anybody, if they know that it's all session-based, so if they know the session ID to be able to join the session, they could be sitting at home and log in on their phone or their computer. So the clickers are the way to go for voting.
And if the software did require upgrading, is that just something we download like we would upgrade
Right.
the Windows?
Yeah, it's a free download from our website, and the licensing is what allows you to collect the responses from an audience. Anybody in the world can download it, that way they can create their.
They were on the floor when we came over.
Any other questions from the board?
Sure, over there.
He's just trying to keep things out. We have some overflow. Yeah.
I think the biggest reasons, what you mentioned, the the anonymity. A lot of times people are concerned about, am I able to cast my vote the way I honestly believe, or am I worried about what other people are going to say, and how am I going to be viewed around the community?
Or not being counted at all,
Yeah.
slipping through the cracks?
Well, and
and
then that would be the
counted.
other thing, the time involved, and the standing and sitting, and are they getting counted accurately or not?
Get some more chairs and thank you for.
I guess, if we can't get everyone seated tonight, we won't be able to have the public hearing.
Thank you.
Because I've been advised legally that you can't have a public hearing when people are trapped out in the hallway and can't hear.
About 10 chairs.
Chairs.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
With the clickers, just have them passed into the center aisle.
It's Vanessa, Cole, me. Do you have a phone from us or the account? And Tiffany. I gotta go, hon, because I'm in the middle of a meeting. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Games at 5:30. Give us a chance to go
How are you? Good, how are you? Good, hi.
I didn't recognize you without your hat on.
There you go. Right.
Good, are you?
I know, right?
No. Are you a sophomore?
Junior.
Junior?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever works, but just 1 second.
Not, yeah.
We're still on this. Any thoughts from the board?
What's that? She said what?
2 easels.
Two
Otherwise, I just put them on the chair.
easels. Are you gonna hand these out, buddy?
Yeah, I will when we start.
Are we starting now?
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
Are we starting now?
You done?
Looks like it. Yep. Go hand them out. Yeah, just hand them out.
All right, looks like we have everyone inside, so now we're gonna move to the special permit application of Water Supply Protection Overlay District for Green ER, proposed improvements to the green.
Handing something out.
Yes.
While this meeting is still open, I would like to make a motion before we start the special permit hearing that the Board of Selectmen have a meeting in the next month to discuss and decide whether the board wants to retain control in the process of changing the upper green, or if they want no control and to accept it as a completed gift.
Second.
Any discussion?
Clarification on what that actually means.
Town council, can you clarify, can you respond to?
Sure. So the Upper Green is owned by the town and therefore controlled by the Board of Selectmen. If the Board of Selectmen were to choose to accept a completed gift, they could retain no control over the process. Because if they did, you would have to comply with the procurement laws as well as the fair labor wage laws. So if you retain control over it and want to help mold the design and things of that nature, then you need to comply with the procurement rules. And this board hasn't made that determination yet, as the Board of Selectmen, which is separate and apart from the permitting you're about to undertake. So I think what the member is suggesting is that the Board of Selectmen have a discussion about what you want to do, whether you want to retain control and participate in the design, public input, things of that nature, or if you're willing to turn it over and accept a completed gift. So I think that that's the conversation that the Selectmen
Now,
would like to have.
And I think, to clarify my motion too, is that the selectmen being the window to the citizens, that in this conversation that we would have in the next meeting, we've never really been able to entertain that clarity of what the people would really like to see at the end. So that's figuring into what this would be.
Right, and so just to further clarify, on tonight's agenda, you have a Board of Selectmen meeting, but there's not an agenda item to discuss as the Board of Selectmen the design, control, and process. You're gonna move into the special permit granting authority role that you serve for the Water Protection Overlay District. And that's a different role, your special permit granting authority. Those are two different things. So because this isn't on the agenda relative to the control and how you accept the gift or not, you need to set an agenda item to have that discussion and decide how you all want to do that.
So that's just asking to make a meeting date and put it on the agenda.
Now, just for legal clarity, when the town accepts a gift, if someone says, we want to give you a Crown Vic, we can say yes or no. But we can also say, well, does that Crown Vic have turbo? Because if it has turbo, we can use it for the police, and if it doesn't, we can't. Now, are you saying that in this process, we cannot make any distinctions in whether or not we accept the gift as it is designed? Or we can say we can only accept it if it complies with certain ideas?
Because of the procurement laws and the fair wage laws, and because it's on town-owned land, three things. If you have your hands in the design process, you've taken control over the process, and you must comply with those rules. So, if you don't want to comply with the rules, you're allowed to accept a gift over which you have no control once it's completed on town-owned land and not have the donor comply with the procurement rules or the fair labor rules. So, I'll give you an example. A private entity wants to donate a building that's to be built on town-owned land to the town. They want to control the contractors, they want to put it out to bid themselves, and they want to control the design. The town, the board of selectmen say, that's great, we just really need that EMS facility. We don't care, we just really need the EMS facility, and those people know what we need. So, we're fine, here's a right of entry, go on, build the building, and when it's done, and you have the CO, come to the board of selectmen meeting, and we'll accept it. How it's built. Okay, so that's the difference. If the
So
board of
we-
selectmen say, oh no, we need a 3-bay EMS facility, and we want it to be brick facade, and we want it to have a rubber roof. Done. You've controlled it. The entity that's donating it has to comply with the procurement rules and pay fair labor wage rates.
Okay.
Same thing, town-owned land.
Okay.
And the ramifications of that, you can't talk about now, but you should talk about it in another meeting.
Needed that clarity.
Yep.
So by voting in favor of the motion that's on the table, all that does is sets the date for another conversation.
With the Board of Selectmen, not the Special Permit Granting Authority.
Correct.
That's correct.
Doesn't give away.
Doesn't do anything, you haven't had the conversation to make the decision yet.
Any other discussion from the board? Did we have a second? Did we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
I think we should make a motion to set a date.
Ellen, how are our agendas, stuff coming in looking?
February 12th.
We stacked up, or are we looking pretty good?
For the 12th. I'll make a motion that we entertain this at our selectmen's meeting on February 12th.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Now, tonight, we're gonna have discussions about strictly the special permit application for the water supply protection overlay district. We can't get into, the Board of Selectmen can't get into details about the project. That's all gonna come at that next meeting. So as long as everyone's aware of that, I don't want people, sitting here expecting something that isn't gonna happen tonight, although everyone's very welcome to stay.
Question,
Yes,
is there a co-hearing with the planning board also?
yeah, we haven't opened yet.
Yes, okay. That's what I was.
So having clarified that, would you folks like to come up and join us around the table? I mean, you don't have to. Okay.
Otherwise we'd have a mess to do. Everybody.
Hope I'm not in the way here. You're fine. You were.
So the residents of the town of Newbury and other interested persons, please note that on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019, at 7:15 p.m., in the second floor hearing room at the Newbury Municipal Offices, 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Massachusetts, 01922, the Newbury Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing to consider a water supply protection overlay district, WSPOD, special permit application submitted by Green ER, care of Dr. Keith Ablow, for proposed rehabilitation of Newbury's Upper Green, bounded by High Road, Green Street, and Hanover Street, Assessors Map U09, Lot 75, as shown on the drawings entitled Newbury Upper Green, High Road, as shown on the drawings entitled Newbury Upper Green, High Road, Green Street, and Hanover Street, Newbury, Mass. 01951, map U09, parcel 75, dated June 19th, 2018, prepared by Camet Engineering for Green ER, care of Dr. Keith Ablow, and described in the WSPOD special permit application and supporting documents. The application is on file for review during regular business hours at the town clerk and in the selectman's office, 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass. For more information, contact the Newbury planner at 978-465-0862, extension 312. All persons interested or wishing to be heard relative to the special permit application should appear at the time and place designated above. This was submitted by the J.R. Colby, the chair of the Newbury Town Selectmen, and it was published in the Daily News, January 7th and January 14th, 2019. And this requires a supermajority, which is 4/5 votes of the selectmen.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Is there a motion to open our side of the special
So
hearing.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You want to open to the planning side, Rachel?
Yep. I will call the Newbury Planning Board meeting for the state tonight, and also call the public notice meeting for the project at the Upper Green. And if you
Read the notice.
please.
Notice reads, to the residents of the town of Newbury and other interested persons, please note that on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. in the second floor hearing room at the Newbury Municipal Offices, 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass. 01922, the Newbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing to consider a site plan review application submitted by Green ER, care of Dr. Keith Ablow, for proposed rehabilitation of Newbury's Upper Green, bounded by High Road, Green Street, and Hanover Street, Assessors Map U09, Lot 75, as shown on the drawings entitled Newbury Upper Green, High Road, Green Street, and Hanover Street, Newbury, Mass. 01951, Map U09, Parcel 75, dated June 19, 2018, prepared by Cameron Engineering for Green ER, care of Dr. Keith Ablow, and as described in the site plan review application and supporting documents. The application is on file for review during regular business hours with the town clerk in the planning office, 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass. For more information, contact the planning office at 978-465-0862, extension 312. All persons interested or wishing to be heard relative to the site plan review application should appear at the time and place designated above. Rachel McManus, Chair, Newbury Planning Board. This notice was published in the Daily News on January 7th and January 14th, 2019, and this requires a simple majority or 3/5 vote of the Planning Board.
Okay, I'm going to set some parameters for tonight's hearing. We're going to hear a presentation from Green ER, and we're going to have questions from both boards. Then I'm going to move to public comment for any questions from the public. I've reiterated tonight that the Board of Selectmen has to stay on task with only the special permit application for the water supply protection overlay district. This does, for us tonight, this does not have to do with any details about the, visual details about the project, which I know some of the issues some of you folks are obviously here to get into. When we get to public comment, I'm going to ask everyone, please be respectful of each other. Please come to the room, state your name and your address. And that's about it. We'll go from here. So, do you have tear sheets from your legal ads, publications, or green certified mailing receipts from the abutters?
We do.
We do.
If we could get those. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll await your presentation.
Well, thank you. And I'm not sure, given the camera, whether it's okay to stand here. Is this an okay vantage point, or?
Yeah, I think
Sounds good. The audio will work anyhow, so.
Martha, we've got, all the cameras are running, right?
Oh, okay.
They're running live, they're not recording it.
But they're in the room.
But they're on it.
Everybody's running.
Right. So the adults are going to do the bulk of the presentation, but we're actually speaking in some ways for these two fellows here, Cole, my son Cole Ablow, and Ryan Haas, who is also a junior in high school. But the journey began years ago when these guys teamed up with other young people. David Furneaux's son Jack, who's now 8?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe
9 by now. Yeah.
And Clodagh Bartholomew's daughter, who's now 19.
Tiffany's down to Clodagh.
I'm sorry, Tiffany. Sorry, Clodagh, who's now how old?
20.
20. And so she's acted as a bit of an advisor. And we formed a 501c3, which is a charity, of course, to donate to the town under the conditions that you guys are going to sort of grapple with. Improvements to the green that will enhance its beauty, we think, its functionality, and also highlight the history of the green, which is a bit lost in the current architecture of the green, but could be highlighted more. And so really, it's because Cole and his friends had great respect for the green and wanted not only to renovate this one, restore it essentially, but also to move on after this one and perhaps do it for another historic green somewhere in New England, that they came together to move this forward. And our executive director, Tiffany Bartholomew, has been instrumental in doing that, as well as Kamen Engineering and Vern Fisher from Visionary Landscapes Designs. Visionary Landscapes, who has been tireless in working with all the different boards in town, the Selectmen, Planning Board, etc., Historic Commission, the athletic group, which is the Little League, etc. So I'm going to leave this to Vern to say exactly what we're up to, but we can fill in any of the blanks as we go along. It's pretty straightforward, and again, the goals are very clear, which is to enhance the beauty, the functionality, preserve and highlight the history, and improve, for instance, water quality, get the asphalt off the grass, regrade so that we don't have a lake instead of a green, because we currently have a large pond during much of the year. And Vern will explain how we would achieve that.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Well,
Vern Fisher with Visionary Landscapes, working with Greener and with Kamen Engineering. What we did is we looked at the current grade, existing grades and so forth, and we've noticed that usually in the spring and the fall, it floods. It's a very low-lying area. The kids that play softball and the people that use it often have to wade through puddles. We thought, well, one of the first things we really should do would be to regrade the area and make it so that the water would be sloped appropriately as it currently is down towards the pond, but it would percolate through the soil by the time it ever got there and nothing would puddle up. The mix that we would use to raise the grade, and we have all the grading plans, would be a 3-to-1 mix, 3 parts loam, 1 part sand. Why? To help with that percolation, the drainage process, because it does have a high water table in that area. The other thing we looked at, first thing really, was the grade and how to use it, and we thought, wouldn't it be nice to bring the history of the Upper Green and Newbury to the average everyday user? How do we do that? And also to bring attention to the memorials that are currently on site that give tribute to the men and women that have given their lives from the Revolutionary War on from the town of Newbury. How we decided to do that, and then we thought, geez, we see people playing, but oftentimes people can't walk around the pond if they have walkers or if they have wheelchairs. Well, how can we give them access so they could sit? Currently there are benches and so forth, but how could we give them access so that they could go around the pond, they could sit and they could get through there regardless of the weather, unless you have a big snow or ice storm or something like that. So we thought, what if we were to put in a walkway made of Goshen stone? I have pictures, if anyone's familiar with the Art Association, because I think that's probably the best example, where they built the park behind the Art Association in Newburyport, down by the waterfront. That is Goshen stone. It comes out of a quarry out of Maine. Would be using very large pieces, which also show our pictures, but that's a good place to go look where it's been laid, and be very similar, 8 feet wide. The actual walkway would come in where the current walkway is, coming across from the police station, the old town hall, would come and wrap around the promenade, which would allow people, and when they're having services and tributes on Memorial Day, etc., around the flag, you can actually walk around it. We would like to enhance that with some plantings around the outer edge that would also encompass around the memorial itself, so you can walk around the entire place, you can have gathering, celebration, etc. And by putting in hydrangeas on the backside between Hanover, Parker, and High Road, that's really to make it pop. Because living in town now for, I don't know, 27, 28 years, oftentimes I talk to people and they don't even know there's a flagpole. You just drive right by. No one really seems to pay any attention to the Memorial Rock. This is really to make it pop and to bring the attention to it. Also, you can walk all the way down around on the side now, which is High Road, but there's currently a concrete barrier retaining wall that is inside the pond. I have pictures of it and so forth that needs some repair. We will repair that existing wall, and what we're proposing to do is, because of the grades, again, working with the grades, right now, all the water that comes off of High Road goes down towards the pond, so all your salts and so forth coming off the road, we only have to raise it, not by very much, less than a foot. But if we were to build a stone retaining wall, after we repair the existing wall on top of it and in front, the reason we're gonna go in front of the existing wall is for structural stability and also for better drainage. So we're gonna go up on top and over, and it'll just be a sitting wall. So it looks similar to the walls which are on the opposite side of Green Street. If you notice all the old homes, they all have New England fieldstone walls. This is to pick up on that. But it allows us, primarily, is because of function. What we're trying to do is to repair that old wall. How do we do that? Make it look aesthetically pleasing, but we don't want all the salts and so forth going into the pond. So by raising that and just making an 18-inch, 20-inch sitting wall above the new existing grade, we then will pitch everything down towards High Road. And right now, there's a current catch basin right over here. All the water will go this way down and go into the catch basin, so it does not go into the pond itself. The other thing we did is we wanted to carry that walkway all the way down to where the oldest memorial rock is from the Revolutionary War, when it was a militia training ground, and again to bring attention to that stone, which is now near the backstop of the existing ball field. Again, just by planting, we wanted to put 2 rows of hydrangea bushes just on the backside, again to bring attention to that rock, and hopefully people will stop and read it and give tribute to those people that gave their lives. When we put in our walkway, since we're talking about that, we're going to be 8 feet off the existing edge of the pond, so there'll be no disturbance within that region. And we would like to move the benches a little bit closer so they're actually on the edge, the periphery of the new proposed walkway, Goshen stone walkway. One reason why just if anyone's questioning why are we using Goshen stone, because it's a natural stone, it has different colors, and it blends in with the landscape. So it's unlike Newburyport, it's not going to pop with the red. It's not brick. It actually is large, flat, natural stones. That's why we chose it, so it'll be unintrusive. The other thing is, after dealing with the recreation, or working with the recreation committee and the Little League, they had explained that they've had problems where certain towns will not play the town of Newbury Byfield because on that field because of the sun angle when they play in the afternoon. So that came up after, and we said, okay, well, that makes sense. How can we have it fit in so that it's unobtrusive, it's not going to block people's views, and also it wouldn't get in the way of the muster, which is a big deal here in town, as everybody that's lived here for a while knows. So we dealt with the old fire chief, who's now retired, and he came out and met us on site, and we went over the plan and walked through it, and he said this, because they put the tub here, that it wouldn't interfere where we currently asked to locate it. Now, it's not perfect location for the sun angle, but it's a heck of a lot better than what they have now, and I think every town will play us. And the other thing is, where it's in the backdrop with the new backstop, we have that off, right here's that old historic home, and it's really wooded and planted. So it's not interfering, because this was a big consideration of ours. We didn't want to interfere with people's views that are around the outer edge. So by putting it over in this corner, we're really not disrupting anybody's views, which was, again, a big concern of ours.
And we're taking it away from the biggest intersection, that very busy traffic lights.
I happen to live on Plum Island, and I personally never liked the idea of coming down and looking right into the back of that backstop, because I think it's a beautiful park and town common. And now when you come this way, your eye's going to go straight across to the pond and the flagpole and the memorials. You're going to look straight across. I just think it opens it up from every vantage point. But again, that was secondary after dealing with the Recreation Committee and them explaining their safety issues and so forth. So that's how that came about, but I think aesthetically it's much better. The other thing is originally, and we have pictures of that as well, the upper green, the history of the upper green was when the lower green became too small for the town gatherings, they moved it, I believe it was in 1642, they moved it up to the upper green. The upper green was for gathering also, they had the watering hole, the pond, current pond, where they brought their livestock, primarily cattle. People that don't know, Newbury was settled as a agricultural town. Back in 1635, they brought the people and they brought the cattle at the exact same time to come into Newbury and to settle the town as an agricultural town. It's been that way ever since. We thought, wouldn't it be nice if we were to let people know the history of the Upper Green? And one way of doing that, we proposed, was to bring in some bronze cattle. Life size that, well, I look at it, I know some people say, well, but in the late 1800s, the mall, I'm trained as a landscape architect and urban planner, and it's one of the most famous malls in the United States. It's one of the oldest, and it still has a functioning federal courthouse on it. Now, in the late 1800s, the gentleman that moved from Newbury resident, Newburyport, moved to New York City, and he donated that statue of George Washington, which is on the corner that they always have the flags around, and different festivities and so forth. I personally think that adding a statue, which they've done in the Boston Common, which they've done in historic greens and all over the world, and especially here in the United States, from Spain to London to Boston to Newburyport. He donated it to the town, and now when people go by, people that don't know go, wow, George Washington was here. Wow, this is one of the oldest, Federalist, the oldest functioning Federalist courthouse in the United States. I think it would be nice if people were able to say, geez, they have little informational signs next to two cows, unobtrusively set, one grazing, one offset, walking towards the water. They would have granite around them, just curbing with grasses, and an informational sign stating that this is the original watering hole and gathering place for the town of Newbury. That it was started as an agricultural town from day one, and it still is today. This is a way to bring people's attention to and inform people of the history of the place and give a better sense of the place, because right now it just looks like a typical New England town common. There's no reason that anyone would know the history unless they did the research. This is bringing it to the forefront. I think it enhances personally, and I hope everybody in the town will think that in the long run as well. The other one would be a calf, which would be over by the other memorial, to bring again attention to the other memorial, which is sort of set back off the corner behind the pond, and that would be a calf laying down. We're hoping that kids and other people will come along to take pictures, and it will bring attention again to the memorial, but also, most importantly, to the history of the green, which then will make people want to preserve it even more so in the future, I would think, once they understand the history and the background. The trees that are currently planted have been planted kind of mishmash over the years. It was once surrounded by majestic elms, but because of Dutch elm disease, of course, we lost those elms, and now we have linden, silver maple, Norway maple. I have pictures, a lot of them are in poor health. They were planted near the wires, so many of them have had to be butchered. We're proposing to bring back that majestic look of replanting the entire periphery with green vase, Zelkova serrata. Zelkova is one of the closest trees in form that we have to the American elm. It's kind of the replacement for the American elm. It's a Japanese variety, but we're in the exact same zone as Japan, and so we often use them. So, but the idea is to bring that majestic look back, the history, and having that periphery once again planted. We are proposing, and we have a quote, to go with 5 to 6 inch caliper, which are very large trees. Instantly, we will be planting 5 to 6 inch caliper. For those that don't know what caliper is, it's at 4.5 feet above. If you took your measuring stick and you went across the tape measure across the base, the trunk of the tree at 4.5 feet high, basically chest height, that's how big the trunk is from day one. So
how
we're
tall
not
are
going
those?
in with saplings, and they're, so, which is between 15 to 20 feet high when you get a tree that large, approximately. Tim's here, we spoke with Tim and what he thought would be appropriate. He could speak on that himself, but really the idea of planting is to bring back that wonderful, majestic look. Why do we want to do it all at once? Because they're all going to mature at the same time, they're all going to have the same look, and it's going to give you that uniformity instantly and not having to wait 25 years and having a sapling here and a big, huge tree there. Other than that, that's pretty much it. We want to clean up the water, so we proposed that we put in an aerator, similar to what they use in the golf courses when you go by. It's a floating aerator. We had submitted what we think would work well after talking with different experts, but it's basically a floating aerator, and we take it out at the end of the season. So recently, if you've gone by, you see the kids ice skating, playing hockey. I think it's fantastic. It won't interfere at all. You unclip it, you bring it in. That's it. The only other thing we thought about is that lighting on the flagpole. Perhaps we take solar light or something, put it on the pole itself. This has come later, but so that when the flag's flying, it's lit up. And pretty much
So-
that sums it up.
Yeah. So that's the idea. This is a gift from the charity to the town. There's no need for the town to pay anything. And so we'll be raising the funds. We've raised some funds, and we'll raise the rest. And so the idea is to cause no pain, because with the trees instantly planted at 20 feet high with 6-inch essentially trunks, it won't take long for them to be 30 feet high. And we'll have them all looking the same, and it'll be, with that walkway, it'll end up being one of the nicest parks of this kind anywhere in New England. Nobody has an 8-foot Goshen stone walkway around their pond. It's just our, collective insanity that leads us to want to fund that. And so that's the story.
Well, we want functionality, aesthetics, and to bring the original look and history back. We know that it's not exactly what it once was, but we're 377 years later, and things have changed. The ball field was not there. The trees, if you look at the old pictures, didn't look quite as majestic as I think they would presently, because there's been changes along the way. They didn't have benches way back when. It was a grazing area.
They didn't have
That's
the memorials
kinda
way
it.
back when.
And the memorials were not there. The only memorial was there, and it's in all the pictures, is the one that's all the way down near Rolfs Lane, where the current backstop is. So really, we want to bring the history to the forefront and appreciation of the upper green.
Okay. That's it for now. I'm going to open to questions from both boards. I think we'll have the question period simultaneously, because sometimes a question from one board can trigger one from another.
Oh, excuse me. May I just say one thing? Sure. One thing about it, we actually put in sequential order exactly how we would be doing the construction if it's approved, and there's 20 different phases. And just so the townspeople know, we're not going to close off the common at any point in time. Our very first, and I have it here labeled in color, and we also have it all typed out, but what we want to do is the very first thing we're going to do is, let me just put this up here real quick so people have an idea, and then you can actually ask questions. Might give you a better idea, and especially the planning board. Because one thing I can't stand through the years is when I see projects going on and they close it off forever and a day and no one gets to use it. That's not our intent.
Okay, questions?
I think he's gonna go through the steps.
Oh, okay.
Oh, just, yeah.
Can you do me a favor, please? Can you just push that back a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you see it, Jamie and Jess?
So actually, it's kind of hard, it's in color, but it's small for people to see. But the very first thing that we want to do is we're going to do the wall. Why? Because that's the very first thing. We have to fix the existing wall, makes it structurally sound, put in the sitting wall, and put in our walkway. Once the walkway is done, then we can grade it appropriately so that all the water goes towards High Street and goes into the existing drain and not into the pond. So that's 1 through 4. That's 1 and 2 is just initially, and also we will have the entire time silt fence and hay bales around the pond to protect it. So, and we will fence off each and every section we're working in. So this area will be sectioned off with fencing where we're working, but the entire rest of the common is open. Once this phase is finished, we are going to move on to around the promenade. What we'll need to do there is we will close off just this end of the street with fencing and also as a place that we are able to put our materials, etc. But now this is all opened up. So you can now sit on this wall, this is still open, but this would be sectioned off. Phase after, that's 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm not going to bore you with all of them, just quickly to run through it. But phases 9, 10, 11, and 12 would then be to put on, we would then section off around the back side of the entire pond, and then we would proceed to put in our walkway around the back side of the pond and move those benches forward. When that is done, the next phase would be to go on 14 and 15. Once this is completely done, the promenade, first the walkway, the promenade around the pond periphery, and then we will add the last part of walkway, which brings you down to the ancient memorial. And then that will just be cordoned off. And this will all be open to the public as well as the entire playing grounds. The very last phase, and it really has to do with timing, weather, and working with Little League, is the grading, the final grading. And also, I forgot to mention, we're going to grade and hydroseed each time. So once we're finished by putting in our promenade and putting in our walkway, that'll be graded and hydroseed so that we get grass growing instantly. So once we move on, you've already got a lawn, you've already got a nice walkway in place. Very last thing would be the relocation of the ball field and the grading, which we'd have to work in conjunction with the Little League to make sure that the timing's right. Most likely late summer, fall, after the Little League season. As far as the trees go, and have to deal with Tim, ask what he thinks, and also with the DPW. But what I would like to do is only take out, and we put this in our sequential order, take out the trees in the area we're working. If we don't have to take them all out at once, we don't need to. So the very first thing, we have to remove those stumps, because they took the trees down, most of them, and the others aren't worth anything along High Road. So the very first thing we do is to remove those trees and remove those stumps. When we move on to phase 2, the first thing we do once that's done is remove these trees and remove those stumps, etc., etc. So that we're working in conjunction. So once it's done, and then we can replant the whole thing all at once, or we can plant as we move from phase to phase, depending again with what the tree warden would like and what the DPW. And that's pretty much it, but thank you very much for letting me explain that, because I think that might have been a concern to some people, so that you will have the use of the common during construction.
Okay, questions from the boards?
For the maintenance of the walkway, does that require herbicides? What stops things from growing in the space between the stones, and how do you keep that out of the pond as far as?
We wouldn't use any chemicals at all. If you put in a 8 to 10 inch base, a 3/4 inch gravel, which is what we'd be doing, and then you put the stone dust. The Goshen stone runs on average 3.5 inches. It's the large, it's thick, and they're all vary. So then we put stone dust on top of the gravel, and it varies depending on the thickness of the stone, so that we can get 100% level and get our grades and our slope right. We're gonna have a very tight joint. I have a picture if anyone wants to see it, and again, you can go see it in person down at, it's probably the best example, down at the Art Association. But I don't see anything growing in there. At the Art Association, they have a little bit of moss growing in there, and it actually looks really cool. But
And how long has that been in place?
3 years, I think.
And then in the middle of the green, it shows almost 2 feet of added loam. So I was concerned about drainage in that area. You know, even with the 3-to-1, would it drain, would it settle, do we need, there's nothing on the plan that shows any subsurface drainage going over to the catch basin. So I just wanted, I'm concerned about that, that's a lot of fill, and I'm concerned about A, settling, B, movement, and C, getting the water where it needs to go. So if you could talk a little bit more about that, as this is our water hearing, that would be great.
Yes, the drainage should be fine. We're mixing it with sand. On the bottom, we'll use a sandy mix. It doesn't have to be 100% screened. It could be like 70% screened. It saves a little bit of money, only in the deepest areas, but for the most part, it's all going to be screened loam and sand. There really aren't very many areas that are going to need that amount of fill. The average amount of fill throughout is a little less than a foot. It depends. This is the deep area, but if you actually look where the trees are, this is a high area. When you actually strip it and we take it all off, we'll be able to get the grade just right. And then it's all gonna flow towards the pond, but it will all, you know, percolate down through the soil before.
Good.
So there won't be any flooding.
Vern, I think very, very good presentation and very responsive. Part of the things that we do have to think about too will be a lot of the drainage, even though it doesn't seem it goes a long way, could be with frozen ground and some road salts. So you're gonna be doing some shaping like they do on a golf course to make sure that underlayment and the turf or the hydro seed on top of it is shaped to go where you want it to go. Have you received the engineering response yet?
I have,
To
and I
Cameron?
actually have
All right,
questions.
because there'll be a lot of little questions on that. I don't know if we are gonna get through all this tonight, Vernon and Keith, but I think some of us ought to get into some of those questions, but they might be too detailed yet, and maybe Cameron wants to answer them, but that's out there too, for you guys to be aware of.
Sure, I actually have answered them, so I expected that tonight.
All right, I didn't know if you'd be ready.
But thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned a catch basin.
Yes,
Is that currently there?
yes.
Okay. How many
Yeah.
catch basins are currently, do you know, around the green?
There's just a couple. There's one here, right here, and then there's another one over in this area. I have it on the map, but we kept digging because you can't find it. We thought there was one over here. I don't know if they ever found it. I don't think there is one. Looks like there's one, so we looked for it. There isn't.
Brad, do you have an estimated timeline for the project, beginning to end?
3 to 4 months,
4 months. No.
depending on weather, you know, but yeah. Shouldn't take longer than 4 months now.
Has there been a cost analysis on doing it?
We have.
You have?
We're upward of over 600,000.
And funding will do that as you go along.
Yes.
You have collections coming up, contributions coming in.
We do. Actually, I'm going to let Tiffany answer that because
Okay.
she's in charge of it and also with grant money and the banks. Tiffany, you're on.
So currently, we've raised about $50,000 to start for our planning, and we are still taking donations. We're applying for grants. We have some state grants and some private grants that we're looking at. So a lot of that is going to be contingent on permitting though first.
Yeah, we have very strong support from numerous businesses, from even people at the state legislature, but they can't move until it's a go. So nobody is going to commit and sign the check until they know that their money is going to be used exactly for what you folks, if you do, approve.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there's going to be enough funds as you go along. Okay, Tiffany?
Yes.
But thank you.
That's part of the help of doing it in phases because we know what it's going to cost for each
Right.
phase. And we don't disrupt the rest of the public use area.
Yeah, have you upgraded your, or updated, I should say, your grading plan, grading water plan, from the last one I've seen apparently?
The grading plan? I don't believe so. It's what Camet had put together. Everything's within 2 feet, so it's not like, I actually have it.
Rachel, do you need that to reflect some of these things that the engineer spoke about, or just?
Well, I'm just, the plan that I looked at is not showing that catch basin being used, so I'm just kind of wondering if I'm not seeing the updated plan. I mean, it's been explained that the water on the high roadside would be going to the catch basin.
I actually have pictures that I can show you, because if you look at it right now, all the water goes towards the pond, but I actually took tons of pictures so that I could show what's happening, and it's really so that we can bring it from here over here, and then it'll all come right down, right there's where the catch basin is.
Right, no, I
But
I
I'm not
understand
sure
the-
with the grading.
with the intent, but when you have the proposed grades on the walkway, the water's still going this way, so unless it's been updated, it needs to be updated.
Yes.
That's what I'm telling.
It's right here.
Alright, but it's not showing to be
Because it's less than a 2 foot, they've got it here, but it's less than a 2 foot grade, so it's sometimes hard to tell. But actually, what we're doing is, once it's built, because this is the higher grade, we're bringing it down to the level of the street.
Alright, this is updated.
So, yeah, it is updated, if you look, but the problem that you have, so people know, is that it's not that big shot. On the grading plan, there's not that much deviation, except for in the deeper end of the ball field. So it only shows in 1 foot contours.
Right, well, that's fine, at least that's more updated than the plan that I had.
Oh, okay.
But you're still showing me a catch basin that's not connected to anything. So, I mean, the rest of the details, you know, we have to know where the water's going.
Yeah, it's just, the idea is just to bring it to the street and have it just, because it naturally goes down there now anyway. All the water from the street goes to here.
All right, so you're bringing it out to the street.
We're bringing it from here, the walkway, to the street, and then it's going into the catch basin, which, yeah.
After you clean it up.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Pick it up and have young Chief hold it so we can see it.
Sure.
You wanna help out, Cole?
My concern was, and I don't know if Rachel really addressed it with you. If I understand, the catch basin is on the other side of the green.
Yep.
And the only thing is, you know, I've worked on golf courses, and my son is a superintendent, and we shape a lot of water and how it goes by shaping what is under the turf.
Yep.
So, as you do in your projects, I'm a little concerned if the regrading process from the two streets
Mhm.
is going to, maybe because of the grade, put water towards the pond. How are you getting it, and it's probably because I'm not grasping the concept, but how are you getting it around the pond to that drain?
Well, the catch basin actually that's there, which is on the upper green, is actually much lower. And the pictures really talk 1,000 words. I could pull it up on my computer and show you.
I mean,
But,
is any of this
I
water?
might even have it.
Is any of this water from the roads? Am I thinking it's gonna go all the way around here and get to here?
Oh yeah, no, what's happening now is water goes this way down, there is a catch basin down here. Water comes down Hanover Street naturally, and it comes down High Road. All we're proposing is we're gonna keep, because this is a higher point, so we're working with what's already going on, just at a better gradient, you know, a slope, so this is much higher. It's right along High Road where we're bringing it to the street. Everywhere else, we're keeping it in the town common, it's not going to the street. But along High Road, mainly because the actual pond is lower than where the street is. So everything that comes off that street winds up in the pond. We have to raise that grade, and where we're gonna have to fix the existing retaining wall, we can do both at the same time. So we can raise that grade and now re-slope it towards the street, but only along the pond on this side.
So you're not gonna put in a pipe or anything, take the water from the sort of southeast side of the green and get it around to the east-north side to get it to that. So there's no.
No, sir.
Okay.
Now, we were gonna go with what's currently existing off, which is really our grades of our streets. We aren't gonna change that. And so everything's directed by the current grades. And what's happening now is we've got puddling in this area, and it slopes down. We're still gonna bring it, as it naturally does now, towards the pond. But it'll percolate through, because we're gonna have a much better slope. We're gonna work it underneath so we know where the water's going. The only part we can't do that, because we don't want it going into the pond, per se, and there's not enough room, is right here along High Road. Which is where the current retaining wall is, which is much lower, so we have to raise it up by about 10 inches. Once we raise it up 10 inches and bring it across, now we're at the right grade, so the water will shed, and then, as it does now, naturally on that road, it goes automatically to the catch basin anyway.
One of the things you mentioned is one of the past meetings was the old fountain that used to exist. Is there any possibility of restoring that historic fountain as opposed to putting in the aeration fountain that you talked about?
I actually have pictures of that too. I took a lot of pictures, but what it is it's granite. It looks like it's concrete. If anyone comes up to where Vern's old gas station was on the corner of Parker and High Road, directly to your right, if you look, it's about yay high, about 4 feet, 3.5, 4 feet, whatever it is, and it's a circular granite. It looks just like a planter. They have some plants in it. But it was, yeah. But that's it. So I don't know how you could use it. I keep it because I think it's historic and it's wonderful. But
I just wasn't sure if
yeah,
it, having served the function in the past, if it could do the double service of staying historical and cleaning and aerating the pond as is needed to keep it clear. So it was just a question.
no, it's cool. I don't. It's kind of didn't want to put anything in the pond except for to keep it aerated. So by having a floating one, it doesn't really intrude on anything. It's just trying to keep it aerated. So if we were to do that, I'm not sure how you would do it. If you know it, you'd have to put it in the pond.
I don't know how those were connected in the past. I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
I'm not sure either.
I don't think that thing moved too much these days.
Yeah.
I know it hasn't moved, but I figured they must have.
Someone might know.
Yeah, I got some answers to that.
Not yet. We're gonna finish.
Well, I have
the
some
tour
answers to
discussion.
that.
I know.
You were
but-
asking a question, I have some answers to it. I'm not gonna make any presentation yet, but there is an aerator in the pond. The selectmen put an aerator in that pond a few years ago, and it broke, and it hasn't been fixed. But it was on the bottom, an aerator. So it's
But that's
fixed.
not connected to the old trough.
No.
Was that connected? Does anyone know if that was connected directly to the pond with a pipe and a pump?
No, it was
That,
pumped.
no.
It was pumped.
It
did
was
have
pumped.
Water at one point in time.
I'll answer a million questions.
That's what was there originally in 1890.
They asked her.
I have a question. Are you, to do all this work, are you gonna be bringing any heavy equipment
Gonna bring in a excavator loader.
in? An excavator model?
Yeah, it's a combination.
No big trucks full of dirt?
Oh, yeah, well, we're gonna bring dirt in, but I talked about heavy equipment, that's just dropping it off, and it'll be in the areas we're working in. But, no, the trucks, yeah, just dump trucks, but it's a piece of equipment's an excavator loader. TLB, John Deere, medium size.
So, where are you gonna store it when you're done with the day of work? Like, what's the plan? Let's just say you get the green light and you go. And now the day shows up and you show up and you have this big equipment. What's your plan?
Keep Admiral's driveway.
Why not? Look, it's this or the swing, you gotta pick. No, I'm only kidding.
Oh, it's a good question. Actually, we keep all our stuff at the parking lot on Plum Island, so it's nothing. We take our excavator all the time back to the island. It's right
Okay,
there.
so you're gonna not keep anything there?
Well, when we're working in this section, I would keep it here where it's fenced off. But on this area, we can't. There's not enough room. So phase 1 through 4, no, I will remove it because we have that fenced off. There's no place to put it. you know, I mean, it's limited room there. But when we get into this phase, no, there's plenty of room. We could keep it on site and it's all fenced in.
As you're working in that spot.
As we're working in that spot, correct. And the others, we're taking stuff out as we go, so we're not gonna have big piles of debris. We're gonna be removing it as we go, and then we'll be bringing it in, and having it dropped off, and then we'll be able to, you know, install it, meaning the 3/4 inch stone, the stone dust, etc. We'll be bringing in the Goshen stone, or be coming in 18 wheelers at a time. There's 93 pallets. It's a lot of pallets. So it's not all coming at once. We're doing it as we go.
For the sake of letting people in the audience feel a little better about the process, the planning board's engineer has weighed in depth on a lot of these things. You don't really have this, but I'll read just a few things so you know that it's really been gone over by a certified engineer. And we're probably not gonna get through the whole thing tonight anyway, and he's gonna have a tendency to go through everything that Vern's talked about again here tonight. But I mean, he's saying things like, the plan does not show any underground utilities. All location has to be 200 foot of the engineer should add a typical note requiring dig safe. On and on, he talks about the trees. So removed and replaced with suitable fill. So there is a certified engineer that's on, and Rachel might want to speak to this on the planning board side, because we have an open meeting with the two of us here. So we have really detailed work being done on a real detailed engineered basis. It's just, I mean, maybe we should read all these things so you know, but I think it might be more important that after Vern further illuminates what's gone here on tonight, that there'll be, I'm sure the engineer will have more comments on it, Rachel?
Yes.
And a lot to do with the grading part and how they're gonna shape and move the water, so. But I want you to know that it's just not us flying by the seat of our pants tonight asking questions. It's really being taken care of by the site plan review engineer and the planning board too. And he's working directly with Cam Engineering.
Speaking of the trees, one of the questions that I had is about, you mentioned that it's a high water table there, and mature trees take a lot of water out of the ground and aspirate it. How much will that be lost in dropping the age of the trees significantly? Because I guess how much more water will be in the ground as a result of that when you change over to the younger trees?
Well, see, the water table, we were getting much higher. We had one of the driest seasons ever. I never saw the pond actually so low as it was a couple of years ago. When we've had really wet springs and so forth, yes, you'll see where it puddles, but it seems to percolate down except for where it puddles up. We're trying, by raising the grade, that's going to shed all the water, and we're going to shape it in such a way that the water all goes accurately and disperses properly so that you don't have any puddling at all. I mean, really, it's a huge expense to do this. I would rather not, but in order to really fix the green, so you can play and you can walk and you can run with your dogs and not be sitting in puddles, we need to regrade it appropriately. It's essential if you really want to do it right. And because we're raising it, we're not lowering it in any area. That helps with your question. I mean, the water table, since it's a certain level, it goes up and down, but it's not. I've never seen it when it gets so high, like on Plum Island. I'm from Situate, Mass. Originally. The water table gets so high, there's no place for the water to go. Since in basements, they want to know why it's not going anywhere when they've got the pump running, because the water table's not going anywhere. There's no place for it to go until it starts to recede. I've never seen it in 27 years. I don't know if anyone else has, but I've never seen that happen on the grid.
Speaking of trees, how many trees are there in the project? New trees being put in?
14.
14. All from one nursery, do you know?
Yes, Milliken Nursery, we have to get the money in soon because they have to dig them in the spring, and they're not cheap, so. We've got the quotes, we have the quotes, and we can get them, but we would need to know sooner than later, or else we're gonna be waiting another year.
What is their commitment for replacing the tree that doesn't take within a certain period of time?
Well, trees are guaranteed if we plant it.
Yeah, but for how long? I mean, I don't want to see it all done, the town accepts it as a gift, and you have a half a dozen trees back.
like 2 years later.
Guaranteed for how long?
Well, honestly, it really comes up to the funding, because if
Right.
we're gonna do that, then we just have to come up with the money to replace it if one dies.
Well, it wouldn't be forever. I mean, the nursery probably provides a guarantee for a certain period of time.
No.
2 years.
No nursery does that. When you buy from a nursery, you take it as a contractor, and then we give the guarantee that, because they're guaranteeing when they sell it to us, it's in good condition, it has a good root ball, or you don't accept it. If we accept it, it's on us. We're getting it at a wholesale price. In this case, we're a nonprofit, so there's no money being made on materials. We're getting everything at the contractor's price. We aren't getting any guarantees. The guarantee is to make sure with my 40 years experience that I look at it and I know I'm gonna get a really good tree, good quality, with a good root ball. But if you want a guarantee from us, I'd say that we would be willing, yes, because last thing we want to do is put in $600,000-$700,000 into a project and have 2 trees die. You're going to replace them, because then you've ruined all that hard work and effort that you've put forth. So I would say, from my standpoint, yes, we would definitely do it. We just have to have the money.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah.
In your financing, I mean, what do you have considered building in contingencies for unexpected site conditions, or, and what about sureties? Have you given any thought to posting sureties?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the insurance and sureties, yes, we can do all that. As far as, I know it's in here, and I've actually tried to answer some of the engineer's questions, and I think I have. I think I'd like to talk with him, we'll go over it all, and also with Camet, with Emily, who's running the project, the Camet Engineering out of Amesbury. But one of the things he asked was, what if, you run into an old foundation? From the history that I've learned, there isn't any old foundations on that lot. So I don't expect to run into anything. We're really mainly building up instead of building down, except where the walkways are going. So do I expect to run into anything? I doubt it highly, but you never say never, because who knows, And in the old days, they sometimes just dug a hole and, here, we can get rid of it here. Who knows?
Yeah.
I can't say they didn't.
Yeah, we're striving for...
I don't think they did, but I can't say they didn't.
We're striving for perfection, of course, right? But if you took a snapshot of where we're at now, it's in disrepair, right? So the town, in order to bring it up to something that gets a C, would cost money. But we want to bring it to an A+, right? And so if we get a 97 instead of 100, that would be okay, because we at least not have asphalt encroaching on the grass, a giant puddle as our green for 2 seasons of the year, disrespect to memorials that are there, sun in the eyes of the baseball players. So, I mean, I think we want 100, but, if it's a 96, we'll take it.
Well, you would,
Right now, it's not good. It's not good.
You would expect to have all your funding together before you began any part of this, I assume.
No, not necessarily. It's in phases, so the phases are self-contained. So as soon as we have enough for phase 1, we'll go with phase 1. And then, I don't think there's gonna be any problem with the funding. I think it'll be forthcoming quickly. However, we're not gonna wait for every penny for all the phases if we know we have enough for the walkway, the wall, and the promenade, for instance. Might as well do it, and then we won't start any phase, because they're all self-contained, until the money's in hand for each phase. Yeah.
And part of that also is why we specifically said that we're gonna regrade and hydroseed, and we'll take the trees down as we go and replant. So if for some reason we did come into a snag, government shut down right now, so maybe they gave us grant money, but we can't get it. Who knows what's gonna happen a year from now, if we were counting on that. But if we're doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, even if we have a delay, we haven't interrupted anything along the way, except for a short period of time. And then we will move to the next phase, so that it's open for use. That's really, I think, very important. And when you finish that phase, it's done complete. Go to the next phase, done complete.
How many trees are you planning on removing?
There are 19 trees that are currently there, but here's the problem. I looked at it, and you can see, I think we have it nicely spaced. In order to keep this open for the tub, that's great, we can now plant around here, but they have trees that are planted were planted. Now, Tim could say there's mainly stumps there. I think you got two here, and there's a couple of stumps and one tree that's not too pretty. But they're right next to the lines. So where we're planting, we're coming in minimum of 20 feet off the edge of the road so that we don't disturb and take away the beautiful canopy. The whole point of planting the periphery of the common is to create that original look. And in order to do that, because they didn't have overhead wires, etc. years ago, we do today. So all the trees are moved in 20 feet off the edge, so none of them will be distorted and ruined by pruning if they had to do it in the future.
So you want to remove 19 trees and replant 14 trees
There's currently 19 trees.
that are gonna be removed. And then
I think they took one or two down since then. That was my old count. I'd have to go back there, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there were 19 trees.
I just don't know if I'm reading this right, that's why I'm asking.
The plan in front of us, is it depicting existing trees or ones you're going to plant?
What
Yeah,
we're gonna
both.
plant.
Both.
Yeah.
I think Camet has them on both. You have to look, depending on where you look on the
My number
plan.
says you're planting 21.
Yeah. No, I actually spoke with Emily. Their internet went down, so she was gonna be here. She was gonna upgrade things, but there's not. If the town wants us to plant more, that's great. I have absolutely no problem with it. My big thing, because I'm an arborist as well, is I want to make sure that those trees are going to grow mature, have a big, huge open canopy, and create the look we're going for. And I don't want them to be right under the wires where they're going to be destroyed, because they do it all the time. What's the point? So it's really spacing it properly and putting it in the right spot off the edge of the roadways, so that they can fully mature and have a big, wonderful, beautiful life. Now, we can plant more. There's not a problem with that. It's just making sure that we fit them in appropriately, and the spacing's appropriate.
If you work in shifts like that, like you're saying, you're gonna work in sections?
Phases.
Yeah.
Phases. Other questions to how that would affect the overlay district? With the water, how does that affect the water runoff? I don't think it, as long as it's, and maybe that's a question for Martha.
Maybe you need a plan that shows the watershed and where the water is going.
Well, we already had that done. Cabinet Engineering, we went through this
Yeah,
whole
we have that.
process with wetland engineers with extensively.
Okay.
They did do it.
Did they do test drills to see what's under the grass?
Let's wait. I'm gonna open it up for public comments shortly.
I didn't see it in the plan set, so I apologize. Is it in the plan set?
I don't believe it's in the plan set, but it was written. I could get it from Camet. They did present it at our meetings. They did do the, they had the wetland specialists go in. I don't know, we paid a lot of money to have it all done. Research, where the water table is, what's underneath.
Now, did that go to Concom?
It went to Concom.
So I think
yes.
that's the disconnect here for us.
Okay, it
is
did
that
go to Concom.
It's not in, so this is the Water Supply Protection Overlay District and Site Plan Review, right? So those questions relative to the water flow and where it goes is really important to the board. So it would be great if you submitted it to the board as well, because I think that's where the questions are. That plan is not in this plan set.
No, I don't think it is. It
Right.
was given to the Concom.
Okay, so you
and-
need to submit it to these guys.
Okay.
And Lisa,
We'll do,
that's a
Lisa.
good catch, because that should be submitted so that.
That's correct.
Their
Joe
engineer
Swank
can
can
go
look
through
at
Joe
it.
can go through
Right.
So-
Rachel, do you want to read the letter from Joe so that Vern can respond to it? Or do you want to hold that for the next time we get together?
What are you letting me respond to, right?
I think holding it would make
Okay.
more sense and give the public a chance to,
And this, we'll make sure this is online,
If
right,
he has
Ellen, can you make this, get this
Do
up
you have a
online?
copy of it? We can respond.
no, he had the problem, yeah. And he should respond to it, but they haven't, we haven't gotten into details.
And he should respond
In
to
writing.
some of the stuff that came out of the Conservation Commission's engineering plan, right, that they did, not what they're giving us. No, but that's gonna affect the image.
Sure, can I say something? Hold on,
The
initially,
approved
you
plan-
said people were supposed to stand up and identify themselves. I'm sitting back here, I can barely hear some of the people who are speaking. I'm
Okay,
sure
I'll
some
ask
of the other people are having the same problem.
I'll ask people to
could-
speak up,
could you
thank
Take
you.
care of that, please?
Do you mean the approved plan?
I don't think the Conservation Commission has approved the plan yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do.
Yes, they have.
They asked us for some,
We did all that, Lisa, we really did. We'll
Wait a
get that
minute,
to this
let
board.
Martha speak loud so the audience can hear.
Right, my understanding is that when, before the Concom, they did close the public hearing and approve it, but they have not written the order of conditions yet because there was some information they were waiting for from you guys.
Correct,
So
and we have that for you.
discrepancies that needed to be resolved.
Right, so this board can have a complete record,
Yeah.
and this board can have a complete record. They need the watershed report and that plan that goes in the plan set.
Okay.
That way, Joe Sawaka can look at it as well. You can respond to Joe's comments already and maybe add anything that's necessary or whatever, but at least that, this board will have all of the answers, as will the planning board.
All right. Are there further questions from my board right now?
Just one quick question, and it's just not very technical. I don't know where I read it, Damon, can you remember reading it, and Tim will know. I guess they're doing a lot of work with, I guess, the American elm now. And I don't know if you've looked at that, if it's a viable source too, it gets to be 100 feet, I guess it's quite a tree. So, did you read that from, I think it was the Newbury Port tree?
You got correspondence from a number of people, one of which was a request to look into the new American elm.
Elm. So that might be just something to look in a little too, right?
Sure.
I have a question. Right.
Yes.
We mentioned surety earlier. As part of the site plan review process, we discussed surety, amounts, reasons for what the amount might be, so you might expect that to be in the decision. So we will have a dialogue about it, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so
Hold on for a second. If anyone can't hear, there's a couple of seats right up here, sir. There's a couple of seats. Sir, there's a seat right up here if you
What
want
about the other people who can't hear?
If,
I'll switch seats if someone wants to sit.
right, why don't we
What
do
about all these
that?
people back here?
We'll try and speak up.
Get a microphone, for God's sake.
okay, so I'd like to open it up to public comment. This is for the water district's overlay protection. So what we're looking at right now is strictly to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the community by ensuring adequate quality and quantity of drinking water for the residents, institutions, and businesses of the town of Newbury, to preserve and protect existing and potential sources of drinking water, to conserve the natural resources of the town of Newbury, and to prevent temporary and permanent contamination of the environment. So there is a lot in this plan that I'm sure many of you would like to talk about that we will be discussing at our next meeting. But today, we would like to only talk about the things that affect the water supply and site plan review.
So no effect.
Does that fall into site plan review?
Well, yeah, nature and character of the town, and then.
So, if you would like to make a comment, please come to the front, state your name and address, and then give your commentary.
Now, is this for both hearings? If you just announced it just for your hearing.
What we can consider is just the water protection.
Right.
Site plan review can consider the general character.
A lot of other things, right?
I mean, is it possible now to talk about the board's seeming lack of interest in history, or is that some other meeting?
That's the next meeting.
That'll be fun.
Please stand up.
I have a procedural question.
An address you would get.
And
Yes.
I'm wondering, is this going to appear on a ballot at some point?
No.
Joan Carrington, 36 Main Street, Byfield. What is the procedure here in terms of, will there be a ballot question after all of the hearings? What comes after you? Are you the sole decision maker here? How does it work?
This is new ground for the Board of Selectmen. accepting a gift in this style and nature. And we've had some discussions amongst ourselves as how we want to proceed with it. So we've not done this before, and so we're not entirely sure what route that we are going to take moving forward. Part of the reason we're going to be discussing it in 2 weeks is so we can talk about what the best way to get public input into this process is.
What are the legalities involved? I mean, is there a structure where it should go to a town that you're the beginning step? And how many board approvals does it need, or does it go to a ballot vote?
So town council, the board of selectmen control the green. And if the board of selectmen want to allow this to happen, and whether they want to accept a gift, and how much input they want to have on it, they're going to talk about that at their next meeting. And they'll set a process and let everybody know what they decide to do and have that discussion at their next meeting. The meeting tonight is solely as their special permit granting authority on the Water Supply Protection Overlay District and the Planning Board Site Plan Review. So the public comment tonight is relative to those 2 permits that are required. I don't believe that the board's going to close those meetings tonight. It'll be continued to another date. The other permit that's required is the Conservation Commission, and as Martha said, that hearing has been closed, but the decision hasn't been rendered. If trees are supposed to be removed from the public way, that's also a public shade tree issue, and that will have to have a hearing before the tree warden. So that's the process right now. Tonight is focused on the Water Supply Protection District.
I get all
Right.
that. I understand that there have to be a series of hearings on
Right.
various aspects.
Right.
But my real question is, who is going to make the final decision? How is that going to be made? Is it a board decision, or does it go to a vote?
They can decide themselves whether they want to make the decision themselves or whether they want to put it in front of town meeting.
Okay.
They can decide that, and I believe that's their intention to talk about that at the next meeting.
I see. So it's up to their
It's up to the
decision.
Board of Selectmen, for sure.
And Joan,
Yep.
we anticipated that, and that's why we spoke about that at the very beginning of the meeting, when the meeting was not in not talking about.
You're telling me I should be on time.
That was a motion already made, because we know that's, from day one, public concern and public input is something that is needed and wanted. So that's, we're gonna deal with that at another meeting at February 12th.
Fred, please come up.
Okay.
Fred, stand right there and talk right back, because they can't hear anything.
Oh, wait a minute, I got some hands
All
up
right.
here. I'm not interested in your hearing, no offense,
All right.
but I am interested in the planning board's hearing.
Well, talk so they can hear you.
No, they can hear me.
Yeah, you shouldn't be shy.
Thanks, Fred. We'll always have to hear from you.
Maybe not. Couple over here too.
Thanks.
Can I get a copy?
Okay, I'm interested in the hearing on the site plan review. Because, under 97-9A 2C, no, 97-9A4, I don't believe it meets the following requirements. Under C, environmental features of the site, I don't believe they are protected under this proposal. Under D, same section, the site plan is not consistent with the master plan. And number E, the proposed development plan is not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. I will read my comments here, but you people have them in writing. But I support the rehabilitation of the Upper Green, but this is not a rehabilitation. Rather, it's an alteration from a small town green / common to an urban park. In 1764, Newburyport broke off from Newbury. Newburyport had become quite urbanized, whereas Newbury remained agrarian. Although Newbury today is partially suburban, it still has significant rural areas and considerable farmland. In a recent master plan questionnaire, one of the most common responses to what do you most like about Newbury was the rural character. This is destroying the rural character. If you want an urban park, the report has several. Let's keep the green basically as it is. There is no question that the green has been neglected. Many trees have been removed with no replacements planted. The place is overrun with geese and soiled with their feces. The ball field often floods, and aerator installed in the pond is out of order. I already discussed that. And the pond is not drained properly. The flagpole has no paint on the south side. There are 2 evergreens in the center, one of which is misshapen and the other is half dead. Specifically, what needs to be done to rehabilitate the green? Number 1, fix the pond outlet so that the pond drains properly. You have to understand, and I have a picture here somewhere. Let's pass this around. You'll notice the pond originally, there's the culvert. The pond originally drained to the Merrimack River by going under High Road into Meeting House Pond. Meeting House Pond drained into Johnson's Pond. Johnson's Pond drained into Gas House Pond. From there it went into the Merrimack River. Years ago, I don't know how long, but quite a few years ago, they changed the drainage. And they piped it. I talked to Dick Cunningham about that when he was alive, and they changed the drainage so that it went out Parker Street. And ever since they've done that, that pond has not drained properly. I looked at it the other day, or quite a few days ago. We actually had 2 or 3 weeks of dry spell, and the water at the outlet was about that far above the concrete bottom. It should be at the concrete bottom when that's the case. So there's something wrong with that drainage, and that has backed that water up, and that's one of the reasons why it floods so much. This is not addressing that part at all. When I went to school at Woodford School, which is 60 some odd years ago, yeah, when it rained, it did flood some, but within a day, it was gone. Today, it sits there for a week and a half sometimes. The whole problem is that drainage is backed up, and he's talking about putting into the storm drain on High Road. He's going to add more water into that drain, or maybe the same amount, but it's all going to still have the same problem. And I think a lot of this drainage problem is in that pipe going out Parker Street. Number 2, repair the pond aerator. Actually, I know somebody who does aerators, and a pond that size needs 2. But that's pretty simple. There's one there. Get it fixed. Number 3, install underground drainage from the ball field to the pond. If you can get the pond drainage set up right, you could have pipes under there into the pond and it would drain fine. And probably most important of all, number 4, you need a plan to drive the geese off the property and to keep them off. That is your major pollution problem in that pond. That is it. Number 5, remove the 2 evergreens in the middle there that they use for Christmas trees. Get both of them out of there and put up a donated tree every Christmas, and then take the donated tree out of there because it just looks freaky. And it's wet ground. Those are evergreens. They're not going to want to grow there. Tim, am I right? They don't grow well with wet feet. Number 6, prune the dead branches, remove the sick and dead trees, and grind the stumps. Plant replacement trees, and I think you need about 19 replacement trees. Don't forget, Hanover Street used to have trees the whole side there. They're all gone. And you want no less than 3 species. This is standard. You don't want no less than 3 species. And I'm glad they're going to have big trees because a minimum of 4 inches in caliber. And they should be a Native American species. And you mentioned the American elm. And yeah, there's a resistant American elm today. That could be one of the species. But you want 3, because if you get a blight, you plant all the same variety, you lose them all. Tim?
It really depends on what the people in town want to do.
But what happens if you have a blight? They all go.
I mean, you can have 3 blights.
Well,
You know, I mean,
unlikely,
not really, if you look at,
Based on what?
unlikely.
In other words, I like the opinions of.
Well, this is standard among street tree
Yeah,
planting.
but things have changed, it depends on what you're doing. As far as we know, Zelkova has never had any problem whatsoever.
Well,
That's one of the reasons why
Neither
we
did
chose it.
American elm.
The American elm actually does, and they crossed it, the new American elm is actually a cross between the Chinese elm, the American elm, and Zelkova. So therefore, it's not really
That
100%.
may be the one you're
It's a
talking
cultivar.
about, but there's also a resistant American elm.
It's not
out there.
resistant, and Tim can jump on that.
Well, there is.
There's,
And number 7, nobody's mentioned the flagpole. The flagpole is a disgrace. It has no paint whatsoever on one side. And, you know, it needs to be taken down or checked for soundness. I'm a little worried about how sound it is. And if it's solid, I repaint it. But those are the 7 things we need. What we don't need are statues, more statues, paved walkways, and that's a whole other matter.
They're not paved.
And
I don't know why are you calling paved walkways?
you're putting down stone, aren't you?
It's not
It's
paved.
not, I think you mean paved, right? I don't know.
No, I'm talking about, okay.
You mean with
Stone,
ocean stone, right?
stone walkways, and we don't want relocation of the ball field. That's the historic location of the ball field. Let's preserve the history of this town and convince the petitioners to do the right thing. I'm sorry, I faced the wrong way. This is you people. Otherwise, you should protect this.
When did the ball field go
A long, long time
Yeah,
ago.
no,
When did
no.
baseball start?
1900s. Yeah, it's not that
1850s or
old.
something?
1900s.
I believe it was the very early 1900s, from what I was told, I could be wrong.
Could be,
But
could
that's
be.
not exactly historic.
Could be, I gotta.
And if it was put in the wrong location for safety of children,
Thank you.
I would raise that.
I got a I got a picture here, and it doesn't prove or disprove
Okay.
whether there's a baseball
Keith,
field there or
write
not.
them all down and you can speak.
There's no backstop, but I can't tell whether it's a baseball field there or not. This I think is about 1890 to 1900.
I don't see a baseball field.
I can't tell from
There is
that,
no
because
baseball
of course they
field.
wouldn't have had a
That's the
backstop.
old fountain.
Yeah,
The old
right,
fountain.
they wouldn't have had a backstop because there was no traffic.
You guys,
Yeah,
All
sorry.
good.
keep moving this discussion.
Yeah,
Thanks for,
Thanks.
Please come to the front, state your name and address.
I'm Molly Shamus, 35 Hanover Street. My question is, you're talking about taking down many, many trees and transplanting them. I know the City of Newburyport Tree Commission, they water new trees for 3 years. I would like to know who's going to be responsible for watering the brand new trees, who's gonna pay for the water, where is it gonna come from?
I put gator bags on all of them, which
So
we
who's
planned
gonna-
on doing.
Who's gonna fill them with water?
Well, we did talk about having maintenance for the first couple of years on the green. We discussed that with Greener, because we want to see all the planters and so forth to do well.
So you'll pay for that?
So yeah, we talked
It's
about
not
that.
coming out of
We
any
talked
town
about-
money?
No, and I
town-
have to say that
town
this,
Public Works is not
it's
gonna...
not,
No,
no,
it
it's
will
not,
not.
but I have to say that the other comments also are very welcome, but I don't know where that money would come from for the alternate plan. This is the gift. It can be refused, of course. No, and of course it can be somewhat,
You've
altered.
answered my question
No, it can be somewhat-
about the watering of the trees.
Yeah,
It's a very good question, and thank you for asking.
It can certainly be somewhat altered, but in terms of trying to get this to be right again from where it's at, it would cost a lot. And it would have to come from somewhere, which we're prepared to provide. If that makes sense.
We'll answer at the end.
Yeah, sorry.
Anyone else would like to speak?
You said. Channing Howard, we'll try to stay on a neutral position, Chair of the Newbury Historical Commission, addressing the site plan review on this site. Two points of order with our communication with Mass Historical. In reference to this site, it would be normal procedure to expect that there would be a archaeological survey required by Mass Historical, because it has never been done on this site before. Another point of order and good reading is somebody spent a lot of time on restoration of parks, greens, and commons, started back in 1978, Department of Conservation and Recreation. Section 6 refers to town commons and greens, and they fabulous job of outlining restoration, historically, architecturally landscaped, correctly done greens. All of what we should be looking at is in this state document, Department of Conservation and Recreation. I've been in communication with them this week. Section 6 is direct, speaks to what we are doing here. So it's on the internet, anybody wants to see it. Thank you. Terra firma. My clerk will make it available.
Damon, I would like to note that the Historical Commission, you know, Channing as chair and all his board have done an extremely responsible job with letters to the Board of Selectmen, and they've done a really good job in a non-antagonistic way to give us vision for what the history of that green was. And I don't think, you know, we recognize a lot of people here tonight, but the Historic Commission has done a stellar job. So.
Thank you.
Sir, you wanted to speak?
Oh. Burn Noise Cottage Road. You're gonna take the existing backstop and move it up to the hand tub area?
No, we're gonna build a new backstop.
A lower backstop that won't catch the foul balls?
Well, I'm not really sure. What we wanted to do is work with Little League, because they said they had several different backstops that they would like us to look at, and they're the ones who are actually gonna be paying for that for the most part. They're raising funds. So is the actual backstop exactly figured out yet? No. We're working with them, and they've got suggestions. So we can go with what's originally there, similar, but they were telling me in our meetings that there's a backstop that was used in the 1800s, early 1900s, that would look better from what I saw aesthetically than what we have now. And it has a little bit of an overhang on it, so if it goes up, it catches and comes back down. So I said, we'll look at that when the time comes.
Because my comment would be if you take the existing backstop, move it halfway down Hanover Street, toward the hand tub area, it's gonna be a big eyesore.
Right. I think it's too high, the one that's there. I agree with you.
Yeah, but it seems to work.
Yeah.
Sir?
My name is Fred Jackman. I live at 48 Low Street in Newbury. And I don't know how many people have ever played baseball or softball there, but I played there until I was about 30 years old. And one of the big gripes was hitting the balls, the foul balls, going out into the state road. That's one of the reasons why the backstop is where it is. And I don't know now if the selectmen allow softball players, because I played softball there, I played hardball there. And the balls were hit over into Mrs. Hilton's yard.
Yeah.
You know, and you want to put the backstop where it is now, and all those balls are gonna be hit over into the pond, or over into the, Bill Woodbridge School, or, you know, or is it just for Little League now, and adults can't play there anymore?
It's not
We
been
can answer
limited
that
as
after.
to who can play there, but that's again something we'll be discussing at our next meeting.
And Fred, we've certainly realized that limitation, and thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Lon Hockmeister, 281 High Road, and I'm just speaking for myself tonight. One comment, and I believe I've made it to you guys several times. To retain the historic character of that green, I think you have to keep the walkways out of the center of the green. This little circle around the pond is a real problem for me. I know what you're saying, it makes it more accessible to somebody with a walker. But I didn't, and I even mentioned this to you guys before, you know, the walkways along High Road, fine, over by the monuments, but you gotta keep it out of the green. It's not a green anymore, now it's a city park. You put that in there.
Good comment.
Bill Cooper, 35 High Road. I'm a butter. Not that that matters. But I come to a lot of meetings. And I've been involved in town meetings for a long time. And what always surprises me is the negativity of why we don't do something, what the issues are, what the problems are. I think we should also look at this and say, what an effort to try to improve something that Fred did a good job saying is crappy right now. So there may be certain things that people have individual issues with, but let's give these guys a hand for trying to go out, raise a lot of money that this town would never be able to do, and fix things that this town has never done. Fred got a list of 7 things. We don't take these things up until we get great ideas, and then we shoot them down. So my opinion is we should support this plan, let it go forward, let's beautify the town a little bit more.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
I'd like to say just one thing, and it's not in response to Bill's project either, but it is in response, speaking within still the Watershed Protection District. If this project is to go forward, as things are illuminated, Keith, you can't make a stand saying, this is what you got, don't like it, I'm not gonna give it.
Oh, no, that wasn't the idea.
I know that,
Yeah.
but it might have come out that way.
Yeah.
So, for the selectmen, if we come back in charge of this, we're gonna, I can't tell you, I certainly appreciate someone going out and thinking about raising $600,000 or $700,000 to help refurbish something. But I also know the town of Newbury. And I can remember when someone wanted to plant a tree there, and it was like, you know, someone put a trash monument there, it was like we were killing someone.
No, I get, listen, I totally respect that, and we want the input, and things may well change in the plan as we get the input, but through attrition, the place has been defiled, right? And so we've gotta do something. The question is, we've expended tremendous resources and gone to many, many boards and had many engineers involved, and this is where we're at. There's a finite distance we can go to perfect it, edit it, etc. It's at a certain point, the money to do that becomes very problematic, because we're at $50,000 or $60,000 in engineering, planning, etc. now. So it's just a factor to consider.
And I think at the next meeting, we should really flesh those things out, right?
Yep.
Lisa, so that all the good money you've used doesn't get wasted, but at least you know, if it's not
Yeah.
something you don't continue to do it. And that's the reason for the meeting.
Hi, Beth Wolf, 69 High Road, and I couldn't agree more that it's very helpful to have these great ideas and this great effort put forth. Actually, those meetings that I also attend, I'm always voting for the things that get shot down. So here, though, I'm taking the other stance. I'm taking a stance by this lovely gentleman I don't think we've met. Oh, fabulous.
We don't know Fred.
And Lon, you know, I'm not a historian, but I've edited history books for years. And Vern, didn't you and I work on something at 69 High Road?
Yes, we did.
That's right. It didn't work out so well.
No, it didn't.
But I'm not taking that into account. This green, this beautiful upper green, does need desperate repair. And I love the idea that you would volunteer that great effort and money. What it doesn't need is this pathway that totally does bring this park element into it. I couldn't help but notice that in your presentation, you mentioned parks several times. This place started as a militia grounds, and then it became a pasture.
Then it became a little league field, then it became, a parking lot.
It never became somewhere where you would go there as we would at Boston Gardens versus the Boston Common. So I think, unless, yes, this cost is gonna be very high, so let's take away this whatever you've got going around the pond, take away those brass cows.
Bronze, but yes.
Brass would be
Point
cool.
well taken, but yes.
I like brass.
And just do these wonderful repairs to what is a beautiful part of town.
They put the brass cows in there, so they have something to take away.
And we have 3, so we can bargain. Leverage, yeah.
So I remember when you guys first came before us, it was not this well packed, the house. And I remember Cole, you gave a little description with 2 or 3 co-workers, schoolmates, that the whole purpose of your 501c3 and what your intent was, and I think that kind of got by the wayside. I think it would be good if the people tonight heard what that was, so could you just reiterate that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so we started Greener about 3 or a little more than 3 years ago, and basically, I mean, I've lived here since I was like 5 years old. I'm like almost 17 now, and like, you know, I've always had a huge connection to the green. You know, that's where I learned to skate. Fell in love with like the sport of hockey. Played that for years. Always would play baseball there. I mean, and then I just, like, you know, realized that after looking by every day and seeing puddles and seeing it just in need of enhancement and you know, improvement, that's really why I started Greener or Greener. So, you know, it was also to look forward to other greens, but this was like the most important one I'd ever, you know, work on, just because I have such a connection, you know, to it. So, yeah.
And I believe you had a vision that you wanted to bring forward, you wanted to start here?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, the goal is to keep, you know, working with the other historic greens, but the vision was always to start with this one, like the most important one to me, and it would just be like an honor to actually be able to see change in something that I've like deeply cared about for a long time. So, yeah.
That it was preservation, wasn't it?
Yeah, conservation, preservation. I mean, similar, but important too. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, are there further public comments at this time?
Yeah, my name's Tommy Andrews. I'm actually in a butter. I live at 24 Green Street, and I'm a newcomer in town. I've only lived there since '74. So
you'll always be a newcomer then.
Right. And my boys grew up there. They used to sail boats on the pond. I was a member of the fire department. We used to chase them round up the ducks every fall. People used to come and watch it. There used to be people fishing for little goldfish on the side, or trying to catch turtles. It's been going on for years and years and years. Now I look over at the green now. I don't know if I like this idea or not. It doesn't matter. This is a planning thing, whether you're going to accept the plan. The green's awful. The only people getting any use out of it now, and I don't know, probably everyone here, since you live in a rural area, are dog lovers. They're the only ones that are getting use out of our green right now. It's,
oh, the kids playing ball.
You know, I'm not going to be around to see a lot of these changes. I'm getting a little older.
Can't see.
I don't know if I can keep up the property. I might have to find a little retirement home somewhere. Anybody have a good one? Don't hit me. But however the plan goes through, it does need to be done. Just walk by and see who's using it. Nobody except dogs. The geese make it impossible to take a child over there.
Right.
Right? Now you talked about functions, water, drainage. Put geese in there.
Yeah.
Right? I'm with you on geese. That's made it even more unusable. So any plan that comes up that will improve our green and will do it at their cost is not going to be perfect. There'll be some things, I don't know if I like brass cows, but if that's part of the plan, bronze. I like it. Maybe lead, we can have somebody lit.
Yeah. It's a very light.
Cows are negotiable.
Yeah.
Mentioned.
But any plan that comes up, we're not going to like it all. Whether they're going to negotiate or you're going to negotiate is not the point. It's we have to do something There's a plan before the planning board now. It's up to them to accept. It's up to the Board of Selectmen to give us direction, the town, of how we're going to select this, whether it's up to you or you want to get input from the town. And you presented a great plan, spent a lot of money. If the town wants it, they'll accept it. I'm sure there'll be a little room for negotiation. Maybe the lying down cow could be turned a different way. As far as the baseball field goes, I played ball from the time I was 7 right up through college. And I coached Little League in this town for 12 years. Thank God we used Byfield, because that field is unusable for anybody that wants to really play ball the way it is now. And how many people drive up Hanover Street about 4:30, 4 o'clock in the winter, or about 8 o'clock in the summer? Not so much in the summer, but in the spring and fall. You can't see up the street. When they're down the end, and those batters are facing that way, they can't see the ball. So that needs to be part of a plan. Whether this is the plan or not, it's up to the planning board to decide, and it's up to the Board of Selectmen to get the information from the town. I'm not going to say whether I'm for it or against it, but the green is in rough shape, and it has been defiled. And if you don't believe me, I can sit on my steps and watch it all day long. Just walk by. Do you see any kids there playing? Do you see people with the dogs? That's fine. You need an area to throw dogs? How many of those people are from our town? Okay. Right. Think about the kids, their sailboats, even if the fishing's illegal. Remember the ducks. Okay? And just put that in the back of your head. That's the historical part of the town, because that's what we lived through. Sure, there's a deeper history, and that's going to be preserved, but think of our history with the green.
Just an added comment to that. I agree with you that there's not much activity there, but do you see much kid activity outside anywhere? No, they're all this. They get no exercise.
That's a little off topic.
Organized sports.
Maple Terrace, Maple Terrace.
Mr. Jackman, Low Street, Newbury. I worry about losing the classification of it being a historic district. And I would love to see you work more closely with not just the Historical Commission, but the Mass Historical Commission, to see what can be changed without us losing that designation.
Thanks, Dave.
Further? Ma'am?
Sierra Noise, Hanover Street, and a butter. What happens between the road and the 12 feet in from the trees? What keeps cars from not parking on that space that now the trees are against the road, so you cannot park your car there? What happens to that space? And also, what is the banking like between the stone walkway and the pond? How do children approach the water between the hard surface, and what happens to the goose poop that accumulates on the stone walkway, and does it get, right now the grass absorbs it, does it get washed into the pond?
Go ahead and respond if you'd like, or you can just take it as.
I was just holding back.
You can make an advisement.
I think we have a few more comments.
It's a good point about the, there's 8 feet off the edge of the pond right now, so it's gonna remain as grass and so forth as it currently is. Up until where it levels off to where the walkway, proposed walkway would be. So you've got an 8-foot section from the water's edge to where the actual walkway is. And then from the walkway over, it's grass again. Now the geese, they've tried all kinds of things in golf courses and so forth. Not much works.
Oh, no, that's not true.
Some works. Dogs keep it away. They've tried with certain high-pitched whatever noise frequencies. I'm not sure exactly. What I do know is putting up a picture of a fox isn't going to work. You know, it just doesn't.
How does the walkway get cleaned of the goose poop?
Get rid of the geese.
Right now,
Get rid
the
of the
grass
geese.
absorbs the goose poop.
but also a great way to kind of rid the pond of geese. I mean, the best way was honestly to get more attention of people there, and I think the stone walkway does help bring attention near the pond. So like, I don't know. I think it does. It would help.
It does help.
Swans would do it.
We just started
Just
fighting.
saying.
Some of the other comments and so forth, as far as parking goes, we've had many meetings with many different commissions and so forth, and people were concerned, they want parking. By bringing the trees, I'm looking at the health of the trees. I personally don't see a problem with them parking along the edge, they do it now anyway, in between the trees. But the trees are planted in the wrong place, bottom line. They're right underneath the wires, they're destroyed. I've got plenty of pictures, just go walk it, you know? It's not hard. Anyone that knows trees, now's the perfect time of year because you can see where the cracks are, you can see where the decay is. They're not all leafed out. So we're trying to bring a nice healthy population of trees in the right place. Parking, many people said they don't want the parking to go away along the edge because how are they going to get there? People live here, they want to use the upper green. I think they have a right to park. That's just my opinion. But that has been a concern on the opposite end. Some of the other comments and so forth, I would look into fixing that drain. I don't know exactly what's involved with it. It's something we could look at if that's a problem. I think that was a very good issue to bring up. That's an engineering thing. I will talk to Camet about it, see what they have to say, talk to the wetland specialist about it, and we'll have to talk to DPW about it. Because that's a town project. We're not going in and ripping up streets and this and that. That's not our job, and we're not going to, but it's a great thing to bring up. You know, we're working with the renovation of the upper green. And some people don't like change, period. But things change over time. Yes, it was pastoral land. Yes, it was a training ground. We want to bring attention to that, not take away from it. Now, people may say, all right, I can understand not wanting to bring the Goshen stone around the backside of the pond. That's something that's negotiable. I'm not saying yes or no. It's just what we're trying to do here is to renovate an upper green so people can use it. So people want to go to the park. People want to play. People want to have a picnic. People want to sit by the pond, which you can't do now. And nobody does. You know, so the whole point is, what are we going to do? Do we just leave it? We don't have to grade anything. We'll leave it the way it is. We can leave all the half-dead trees. That's fine. We can, if you want to look at the pictures as to where everything comes from the street, leave it as is. Nothing will change. It's fine. You want to paint the flagpole, I agree with you. Then get some volunteers and paint the flagpole.
So, well, by the way, selfishly, I'll say this. This is a great thing we're seeing. I mean, just to reflect on it. This is what public participation in a real town is supposed to look like. So selfishly, I love that my son's here to see it, right? Because this is how it's supposed to be. People are supposed to speak their mind, and then we'll come up with a solution together.
Exactly. And other thing in pictures, just to bring it up, because I have the pictures, the roadway in High Road went right next to it. There's piles of dirt in a lot of these pictures right next to the pond. That's not what we want. That doesn't have to be 1796. We're now 377 years later. Let's bring it up, keep it for what is today, not 400 years ago, so people can use it, but keep the character. That's what I strongly believe. If you want to keep it the same, it's fine. No one's ever going to know the history unless they do the research.
Vern,
Yeah.
and Keith, and everyone. Speaking still within the watershed, meaning that, I think some of the things that you'll think about, you know, and thinking stone shed water and everything, you know, it's not doing stones and not, it might be the width of the stones. 8 feet's a long, it's a wide swath.
Right.
So let's not dig in.
So Jeff, I think once we get the watershed thing, we'll be able to
And
understand
next
more.
week we'll but that's more than what I'm trying to say.
So I want to let the public finish their comments, then we'll bring it back to the board.
Sir?
Scott Bowden, I'm on 6 Green Street, on the green, on the water. I spent a lot of time on it, and I think I've heard a lot of comments from folks about keeping the green kind of the same and whatnot. And if you as Tom had mentioned, if you walk the green, you park there, and you see what's going on, and you're on the green, you'll see the disrepair. It's really gone along, it's really gotten worse. I've been there for 25 years, so less than Tom, so I'm brand new. You know, there was a light on the flagpole, it's gone. There was lights to light up the ice, those are still there, but they don't work. The aerator's gone. The ball field's gotten worse, not better, as far as flooding. The town came in and their solution was to rip a trench from the flood into the pond, and that's horrible, and scarred up the original field. The drainage, as Fred was talking about, actually I clean that out all the time and clean out the bags of bread that people come and feed the geese, which drive me insane. God bless Vern Noyes. He used to give me all these pamphlets of do not feed the ducks, and I was the goose guy who would go yell at people and give me this U.S. government do not feed ducks pamphlet from Vern. Try as you may, you know. I put a lot of effort. I planted gardens in front of the war memorials, had trees ripped out. 35% of the trees are gone now from when I moved there on the green, and not one has ever been replaced by the town.
Right.
You know, Sylvia and Wilhelmina Lunt planted the weird Christmas trees. I agree with you, they're kind of weird. And you know, one's really just about dead now. You know, it was fun. Santa comes. It's, you know, it's great. The town does enjoy the green for sure, and I think the plan is awesome to try to bring something back. There's a wall talking about the watershed and water. There was a retaining wall that was put in before I moved there, and there's Pennsylvania bluestone on top, and it's all outlined in granite pavers, but all long overgrown. And it's buckled from ice and disrepair, and kids have taken the corners. Actually, there's a chunk of bluestone sitting right next to one of the benches that one of the kids threw onto the. I'll have to go put that back. It just needs something, and it's not cheap, and the town doesn't have a budget to do that. I mean, I've never seen fertilizer, lime, nothing for the lawns.
We don't want that.
Right, so I think the plan is wonderful, and if you know, come to the green, come use it. It's a great place to walk your dog.
Fair.
Claire Dix, High Road. I too think that this is a great history lesson, and I just praise you for doing that. It's just a great idea, and I love the conversation. I think that I go by the green all the time, and I think that Fred is right on target when he talks about the geese. I'm not being facetious, but I just think that they control everything, and so when I was looking at the map and the benches around the pond, I thought that no one's going to sit there around the pond if you're looking at geese and green water, or the temptation to sit, because it looks as though the benches are placed a little bit closer, to sit and have people throw bread into the pond, because that's what they'll do. And then the other comment was, the original plan that I looked at had picnic benches also, and I thought, as much as that is a wonderful idea, it does invite food, paper, wrappers, leaving rubbish behind, and so it invites all the seagulls and all the geese. So those are my comments. I hate to, there has to be some solution to getting rid of the geese. Thank you.
I don't think that we can put the geese problem onto Green ER. I understand the complaint, and that's something to address at a later time. Fred?
2 points. One, on the geese, check with the town of Hadley. They have great success in getting the geese off of their parks and off of their golf courses. That's number one. Number two, where's number two? Oh. They've got to have a layout over there of the streets and what's street right of way and what is pavement. Do you have that?
Yeah, we have where all the pavement.
So there's probably space between the pavement and the end of the street right of way. Am I right?
Yeah.
And that would not be part of the town park, and therefore you could park on it without having a problem. Am I right?
I'm not
Parking
sure.
on the edge of the
Not
street.
following. Is someone else? You're
Pardon
saying
me?
parking on the edge of the road?
Yeah. Is there space there to park on that and still stay in the street right away?
I don't know how you're gonna stop people unless you put up signs. I don't think anyone wants to have
Well, I
signs saying
understand
no
that, but I
parking.
think there
but-
is some space there to do
I
that.
don't think, you don't
I'm
have
not
the
sh-
paved right of way, you only have the
It's just a
layout.
road, yeah, but the right of way normally comes in off the center of a street in almost all towns. And so it usually goes in 10 to 15 feet, on average, I only know working in
Right.
Cambridge. In other places,
You
I don't know
survey it,
about
you find
Newbury,
out.
because they have the right to, usually a town does, to be, go in and plant if they have to put in water lines. There's a certain amount off the edge from the usually center line that a town will own, so that they can go
Right.
in and do
And
what
that's
they
the
need to
question.
do.
That's
Vern,
street
you're-
layout.
That's the question. So the question is, the plans only show the layout, they don't show the paved road. And so Fred's comment is, what's the distance between the paved road and the edge of the layout?
Yeah, simply just
I'll have to ask Kim.
survey it
I
and
don't
find
know.
out where the pavement is.
They have that information, I just don't
Yeah,
know.
they just need to show it on the plans.
Okay, we'll make note of it.
And that's a state highway, and I don't know if there's further regulations
Yeah.
for parking on
The
that.
highway, yeah, right.
Right.
If that's
Not
not
all of it.
enforced, you know, that.
Route 1 is a state
Yeah,
highway.
but not high.
No, I know that.
Green Street, Hanover.
Lon Hoffmeister, 281 High Road. Another comment I forgot I had made earlier on in one of your other presentations. Any chance that you might be able to get National Grid to put those lines underground just for that block?
Sounds good.
Very, very expensive. Back when I was, Lisa was mayor in Newburyport, we worked on trying to get some of the stuff put underground. It's not an easy process, and she can attest to that. I worked on that for a long time. It's very, very expensive. I don't see it happening.
Oh, okay.
Lovely suggestion, though.
You also have to change all the connections in all the houses. So all the services in all the houses have to be
Right.
changed too.
It's a huge process.
Yeah, there you go.
I think we're drawing to a close as far as public comment. So what I would like to reiterate to you guys is, I assume you've taken some notes, we definitely need the drainage plan that went before Concom. We'd like your responses to SOAC, written responses to the engineer, and hopefully before the next time we'll have another meeting. He will have written about the plans that went before Concom, so we'll want your response to what he says about that as well. I'd like to read into the record at this point the letters we've had. So we had a letter from Joe Sawak, Sawaka, I don't know how to say his name, thank you, on 1/16/19. A letter from the DPW director on 1/16/19. A letter from the tree warden on 1/16/19. We had email accompanying letters on 1/15/19, 3/02/17, 6/6/2017 from the Newbury Historic Commission, Channing Howard Chair, Janice Forrest, and Secretary Clerk. We've also had correspondence from, on 8/14/18 from Stan Dixon, 8/17/18 from Matt McCannis, 12/11/18 from David and Molly Seamus, 1/03/19 from Pam Webb, 1/09/19 from Janice Forrest, 1/14/19 from Karen Wakefield, 1/16/19 from Eva Jackman, 1/21/19 from Amelia Random, 1/22/2019 from Carl R. Nold, and 1/22/19 from Jane Neilberg. All right.
That's an old, that's historic.
Yeah.
So I'd also encourage you guys to look at the DCR section 6 that Channing mentioned, or was it one Channing mentioned, because that may give a little guidance. So we had public comment. I think I would take a suggestion from my board about possibly continuing this hearing.
Motion to continue.
Second. You need a date and time, sorry.
Yes, well, I wanted to discuss that. Do you guys want to try and plan for another joint meeting? Okay. So, with that in mind, do you want to add a date to that motion?
I couldn't hear what George said.
He said he doesn't want to deal with us anymore.
If a joint meeting is warranted, I think we can decide to have one. I think in the meantime.
Two different subjects.
Planning board, two different subjects,
Yeah.
thank you, Fred. You have water protection district and we have site plan review, so I think it ought to be done separately for the time being.
So,
Well, we still have to have a meeting anyway. We need to table this to February 12th, 7:15.
I think we should maybe table it after that.
You need to continue this.
We need to continue this.
That's what I meant, continue. You want to continue it to the, 22nd meeting, you mean?
Yeah, I'd do the second meeting so we can separate them.
What is the date of that, Noel? Motion to continue to the 26th at 7:15.
Sorry. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Wait a minute, before we go, so on the 26th rather,
Yeah.
of February, we're gonna have everything that we need to do and be able to vote on the water protection.
Well, you can have his responses, and then you can decide when the line's ready to go.
Okay. Okay.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think you have a date in mind.
Rachel, what do you? Well, yeah, it's either remotely or.
You gonna be away?
Yeah, either or.
Maybe the 20th, I don't know if they're gonna be able to turn things around for the 6th.
Yeah, that's
Right, 20th.
you should get back to it on the
20th.
What's going on?
I move to continue the public hearing of the planning board. March 6th.
You guys stay quiet for just a moment, please.
7:15 p.m.
All in favor? Sorry, who's seconded
Awesome.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for that
Yeah, great job.
Sorry, let's see what happens.
Thanks, man. Thank you. You edits, yeah. Thank you.
Can you do it all right?
Tim's done it yesterday.
I got nothing against it. And I wish I
Wait till you give them a line. I kind of knew that only because I dealt with it.
I was gonna say,
Just luck. That's really the most Ryan thing. He uses ID and everything. Someone put his phone, he was backing out. Wait, is on your phone?
Antietam. You know, Antietam, they have a walkway there.
They probably let it go. They probably let it
And it's not very wide. I don't know.
I thought that if that discussion got any more heated, you might have been able to test out the equipment.
Well, I think as long as they come in,
Well, what it is they have stone, they have 3/4 inch stone. And then you end up.
All right.
You had to work with him a lot.
I stayed out of the way.
It's a lot cheaper.
Stuff that. Hey, keep yourself. So did I. Well,
They wanted to see natural.
that's the only chapter I've seen, but I admire your son and
That's what
the whole effort.
So I'm not against that. I mean, I always looked at it, that I would like to see people be able to use it. Whether they're doing the work. I think that's important.
That's the old no good deed goes unpunished. Right, exactly. You're not on that. Good stuff. Good seeing you. Hey, thanks. Good, how are you? Good luck. Hang in there, yeah?
I actually have.
So great. Oh, yeah. Have you looked at that? I know, right? Just sort of got focused.
We might be able to tap in if we can restrict. Depends on where that pipe, how, what the gradient is.
I know.
And how far in we
Yeah.
have to get to. I'm all for that.
Right, that's why I stepped back.
I just want to.
Somebody else, I don't know.
It's a walkway.
But then having other people step up.
living a lot of street trees.
Used to work with Peter now. Yeah. Right.
That's a I get it.
All right, thank you.
I love the dialogue.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, that sounds good.
All right,
Let's go. Out of here.
Thank you.
Good advice. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, if you guys are talking, could you please take it into the hallway so that we can resume our meeting?
They have a meeting. Let's go. Not you, I'm talking about. You grab your stuff. I got this.
Thank you.
Can't get those wires in the building.
How much money that costs? He's talking to a guy who used to work for, each homeowner has to pay, it'll cost
No, but
$60,000.
there's no wires running across high road.
It's over $10,000 a foot. Because that's what they charge.
How are you?
Sorry, I didn't see you. If I'd realized.
You guys were hiding in the middle.
It was a fabulous
Lesson, I didn't know I was coming back.
Well, come on back next meeting.
I almost talked, I'm gonna come to the next meeting, I'm not here.
Alrighty, moving right along. The presentation of the donation and vote to accept the donation of the AED equipment for Plum Island organization by Plum Island resident Peggy and Lynn. Plum Island Foundation as fiscal agents.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Now,
Guys,
I didn't mean to usurp any discussion, because guys, I don't know if you really realize this, but it's become a groundswell on the island, right? The cooperation is, people are gonna buy them for themselves, and you know, I mean, it's become a big deal, right, student girls? So
Yeah, I
tell
mean,
us about it. I didn't
Tell
mean
us
to-
the backstory.
she jumped in, she
I
know,
know.
she was standing up,
I
she
know,
was
I'm
gonna
a
talk
little
and then.
cheaped up from the last one.
Well, we have to thank
So-
Steve from Plum Island Foundation for,
Introduce yourself too.
I'm Peggy Poppy, 12 14th Street.
And Lynn Mather, 21 Basin Front.
And I'm Steve DeSalvo, 16 Northern Boulevard, Plum Island Foundation.
So, you know, it's been quite a journey, and I think working with the town of Newbury has been amazing. We had such support from police, fire chief, EMS, and we just, you know, it's been a good process. We learned a lot from talking to people, getting input, finding out what would work, what wouldn't work, and I think.
Yeah, once we figured out what the plan might be to be able to put one in Newbury and one at the other end in Newburyport, after a lot of back and forth, and we talked with you, you know, by the time we presented it, even last June, we had worked out so many details through the conversations with others and through Steve stepping in as to have the Plum Island Foundation be the fiscal agent so we could begin raising the money. And then what seemed to us like a daunting task to raise $8,000, which just blows my mind to think of what they're doing right now. Yeah. For us, Peggy and me to raise $8,000 and Steve to keep track of all these little checks was fantastic. Though we are so grateful to the residents of Plum Island, the local businesses, the cash jars that people dump money in at Mad Martha's and at Bob Lobster, and you know, it's Plum Island Provisions. They all
Beachcomber, I mean, they all had a fundraiser which helped raise awareness, and we were really kind of blown away because initially we thought we would get money from Swayze Fund and the banks, and we got rejected from everybody. And then with Steve's encouragement, we decided to venture out and see what we get. So we got a lot of $100 checks from residents, and then the businesses jumped in, and
it adds up.
And we
Yeah, off the top of my head, you had, I think, somewhere in the order of 60 or 70 donations, roughly. I don't know how many, maybe, you know, that's, and ranging from $10, right, to obviously some a lot more, but all credit to the two of you for your perseverance and sort of that grassroots effort, which was terrific.
And like each of the businesses had a little jar, and we ended up with like
No, it was almost $300 for the 5 or 6 jars, as I
yeah,
recall.
so we had almost
which just was
$100 from
stunning.
each jar. So
You know,
people were
cashing it, there were pennies, there were, and there was a
putting in their
$20 bill in
$5
each
and-
one.
Yeah, it was amazing, really. So
Yeah.
here it is. You don't have the case. The other thing that was kind of interesting was we had a lot of, so this is what the AED device looks like, and it's going to be housed in this case. And we did a lot of back and forth with I'll just pass them out, with Chief Riley, and you know, getting the right language on there. And then there's going to be a phone. So this will be inside the case. There'll be a phone right next to the case, which, by the way, we're having trouble getting Newburyport to jump in and do. But
there will be a letter to the editor in the paper soon.
you're going to be the model, and we're going to
Exactly.
try and put a little leverage on the shame Newburyport by getting the phone.
Why won't they do it?
We don't have a clear answer.
You know, Mike.
They don't want to give a dedicated line, right? And seems to be the big issue.
But it doesn't seem to be about I don't know. I think there may be some misunderstanding because they were talking, when I talked about an emergency line, there is a, you know, like, have you ever seen in parking lots and parks where they have a freestanding phone?
Yep.
I think maybe that's what they were thinking we wanted. And those can be very expensive because they're satellite and, you know, they can be like $7,000 just for the phone. But since you have the building and you can get a phone line in the building, then this makes it easy. So they'll just get a dedicated phone line and this will go. And the thing we were worried about was, since they wanted a locked case, we wanted to make sure, because we don't have good cell coverage on the island, to make sure that if somebody tries to get
They can
that they're not going to be struggling
with bad signal.
so they can get in and get
The cell phone issue, even in the last 6 months while we've been working on this, and the last couple months, has become more and more of an issue, that the public is recognizing that cell phones are not the be-all and end-all. And I think that's something we're still trying to communicate to Newburyport to get them to understand. Just because you have a cell phone doesn't mean you're gonna get to a 911 to get to an emergency to get you to your AED.
Well, in fact, 2 weeks ago, was it,
Yeah.
there was that big, you know, notification that not to use your cell phone for 911 because you wouldn't get, and then.
Connected.
So that was what we wanted to make sure, was that we also had the direct dial number.
So I'm sorry if I don't understand this. So this direct dial number here, this Newbury's Public Safety 978-463-0796, if I call that, where does it go?
Goes right to your dispatcher, your local dispatcher.
Right.
So what they're saying is that actually, so now I have that in my cell phone because I have a Vermont cell phone number. What would happen if I called 911 from my 802 cell phone number, I would get sent to Middlesex?
Framingham.
Anyway, somewhere, we got here.
Middleton.
And that's how this whole thing got started. We had a death on our street 2 summers ago. People were calling 911 on their cell phones, and they got bounced all over the place. Now, it wouldn't have made any difference in this case because he had died in the night, but if it had made a difference, it would have been huge, because it took over half an hour to get EMS out there because the cell phone, the calls kept getting bounced.
So Chief Riley was the one who, when he first met with us, he said everyone should have that phone number in their cell phone if they're a Newbury resident. And if something happens in Newbury, you know that's Newbury emergency number. And it goes directly to dispatch in Newbury. And so by having this red emergency phone right next to the lockbox, people can just push the button for the emergency phone. It goes straight to dispatch. You know, you say, hello, I'm here, I've got an emergency. Dispatch can say that you've got, you know, okay, here's the code to get into the lockbox, there's the AED, you can
Where are you
take it.
taking it?
And if there's a drowning or something else, you actually
You
can
can still
get
use it.
straight, so the emergency phone is actually an added piece of this that's super important.
Yeah, because if there's something.
Just to clarify, the 978 number is a fail-safe, that's a backup, right? The dedicated line rings through, they see that it's from caller ID.
But that gets directed right to that.
Yes.
So that's where I'm a little, I mean, I think this is great, but I'm a little confused where you're calling on a cell phone.
No.
No,
No,
so there's a
you're
phone,
calling-
this is a phone.
So
That's
right,
a phone.
so what,
Oh, okay.
so what it says is, right on the side here, it says, for access code, push button on red emergency phone.
Oh, so then you press this button.
And that goes right to the dispatcher.
Oh, so you don't have to use your cell phone.
No, this is just a backup.
Okay.
This is what, and you can't see it, but there's actually a keypad here and a lever that comes down on the box.
And that's gonna be a heated keypad and everything, right?
Everything, it's all weather,
Yeah.
both of them are weatherproof.
I mean, one thing is, both you ladies have done a fabulous job, Steve
And I can remember when Mike Riley grabbed a hold of this too, and was very helpful, because it was hard for us to understand. I can remember that meeting. So Mike's done a good job too.
Yeah, I know, he's been incredibly supportive.
So
And the next step is, we're gonna
Actually, just,
schedule, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, basically, so what we are donating to the town right now is the AED device, the lockbox cabinet that looks like this, that will be on the wall with the AED inside of it, and the red emergency phone that's right next to it, all installed right there on the outside of the building.
And there's some
and-
extra,
oh, yeah,
and there's
and-
some extra, there's some pediatric pads that'll go inside there, and then there's a maintenance, I mean, it's not a, what is it called? It's a
5 years,
5-year.
5 years of program maintenance that Zoll, who makes the AED, will be covering, along with the warranty on the equipment, and so.
Has Mike or Tracy spoken to you about the chronology of when we're gonna have that available to be on the building?
So we've talked to
James.
James, and he said it's probably gonna take about 2 to 3 weeks
That's not bad.
to get it in, and then we're gonna coordinate with Chief Riley and, what's the name of the EMS guy?
The other guy who was at the meeting.
Who's your EMS
No,
person?
it's Tracy. I don't
Was it
remember.
Doug Janvrin, the fire
Wasn't the
chief?
fire
Yes,
No,
Janvrin, no,
Doug-
no,
it
not
wasn't
fire chief,
Janvrin.
it's,
There's somebody else who does emergency coordinating, and he said at the last
he
meeting.
runs the EMS, he does the EMS.
Was it Deputy Chief Lucy?
No, it wasn't
No.
Lucy.
It was
I know
one of the-
Lucy.
I don't
It's
know.
okay.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
We're
we're gonna coordinate with them and have a kickoff event, publicize it so people can come see the equipment, and then they're gonna do a heart saver training to show people how
I
to
heard
use.
you're gonna do training on the island.
Yeah, so who gets shot first?
Okay, so you mentioned two, and one in Newbury and one in Newburyport, so you've got two of these.
We've got, yeah, we've got
Well,
two
we've got two of
AEDs.
we've got 2 of the AEDs, and we're still negotiating with Newburyport about what kind of case and whether they're gonna have a phone or not.
Okay. Who are you dealing with there?
The mayor, the Marshall Murray.
The harbor master
And the
has
harbor
already
master.
agreed,
It's gonna
they
be
were
on the-
very supportive.
It's gonna be on the harbor master, it's gonna be on the lifeguard shack, the harbor master.
Yeah, Paul Hogue, nice guy.
Yeah.
He's been supportive all along as well, wrote a letter for
Yeah.
but there's something between harbor master fire and the mayor that we've run into about. But Bob Connors is now working on this, and
Okay.
he's convinced that he can, persuade the town.
Well, if you've got Steve and Bob on this thing, you'll figure it out.
So the other alternative is if they won't put in a phone line there, we're trying to convince them not to have a locked box, but to get a box that has flashing lights and takes pictures, and getting a satellite GPS device to track it, should it be
Yeah.
taken. So, but we do have some concerns because, I mean, I know for myself, we haven't had, without our internet, without our M-Cell booster, we haven't had phone coverage for the past 2 weeks out there
Wow.
on our cell phones.
Well, you know what, you're very close to fire services, it's not very far away down Plum Island, so.
Yeah. So anyway, we just are very appreciative of all the support we've gotten from the town of Newbury, and.
Thank you profusely.
Yes, and we're very appreciative of everything you guys have done.
Yeah, kudos to you two.
And if you need us for a reference at all.
We'll write you a glowing one.
Well, and we invite you all to our kickoff and our training. if
Yeah.
you'd like to.
So,
When's that gonna happen, do you know?
Well, we don't know, I've actually just written to Pitta Hall to see if we could have it, maybe some evening in the week, like, actually, the date I was looking at was Thursday, the 28th.
You don't wanna do it outside right now?
but we also have to, coordinate with James, and then also with Chief Riley and
Yeah.
the other named person that we can't remember their name, because they said they would do that.
Actually,
The
we have,
training.
And our goal was actually to have a series of training sessions, depending upon people's interests. So, you know, to do the big one to kind of introduce it and then say, look, we'll have additional training sessions for anyone who would like to learn how to do CPR, how to use the equipment, and, you know, in a short period of time.
Excellent idea.
Basically, let's empower the residents of Plum Island to be as healthy and safe as they can.
And there is something called a heart-safe community designation. So after we get this all figured out with Newburyport, we may see what the application process is. And we may be able to get Plum Island designated as a heart-safe community because we've done all the things, you know.
Sounds good.
You get your share of doctors on the island now too, so.
We do.
Apparatus like this.
And in fact, you know, there were at least 2 physicians that made generous donations, and they said the reason they were supporting it was because they do this work all the time and they see people dropping dead of fatal arrhythmias.
Lack of resources, really, if they had the defibrillator, they had the AED, and
Right.
they.
And it's both having the equipment and the knowledge about the equipment. And so that's why we're actually pleased that we raised $2,000 over what we were aiming for. And we're gonna use that to make sure that we can get training sessions, to publicize these training sessions, so that we really could get the residents to know about it.
One thing you might wanna do is ask Chief Riley if you can use his message board and put it up, and he has one of those
Oh,
things.
yes, for his,
When he says, when they shuts the island down,
right.
ask, you know, we can have him advertise when, you know, for training sessions.
Yeah.
Very good.
I mean, a lot of people, I mean, there were people who were a little wary about it because they said, well, how, you know, how would I know how to use that? And, you know.
It might do more harm.
Yeah.
I've heard you really can't do any harm, can you?
No, and in fact, because it talks you through, I'm a nurse, so it talks you through it, and if somebody has a heartbeat, it won't give the shock.
It's
So you
cool.
put the pads on, and if it detects a heartbeat, it just says, call
No dice.
911, don't,
Yeah.
like, and it won't do it.
Very good. Well, could we move to a vote to accept this?
Yeah, I move that we vote to accept.
Yeah, there is a motion on the table, I believe,
Yeah.
seconded.
Are we ready to vote to accept it?
Absolutely.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you guys
you.
so much.
Thank you so much.
You just might have saved
Thanks for
somebody's life.
going
so.
through a whole schmeal there.
And it's on TV.
Whoops, that was all on TV?
Yes,
Yes.
you'll be famous.
Thousands and thousands of people are
Did they
watching.
ever watch it?
No.
You'd be surprised if people would ask me questions the next morning.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yes, all of the.
If there's any way you can find out the contact information for whoever I'm talking about, they were at the last
The
meeting.
EMA.
The EMS person, so we can coordinate with them. That'd be great.
I was gonna say, Mike would know, we just, I
That's
was
true.
at,
Yeah, that's
Riley
true. He
was
was
at the
there.
meeting with
That's
him.
right, we can do
And
that.
he kind of said, they were kidding back and forth, who's gonna do the training? And so, he said, oh, I'll probably be the one to do it. But we've also got a couple of nurses on the island who volunteered, so.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Boy, we had an education about other issues.
So nice. It was, you've been longer than you expected. I bet you didn't expect to go home now.
Exactly.
We're hoping to be here, but that's all right.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
So, we need a vote to accept Council on Aging donations as follows: $100 from Dina, I don't know,
Jean Stair.
Dare, and $100 from Thomas and Patricia Rogers.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can I move that we send a thank you note to Peggy and Lynn
And Steve.
and Steve?
And Mike, I guess, you know, you think, it's part of the job. It's quite an effort, as I understand it.
Yeah, and thanking them for this.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Chairman's report. He signed The PR 1912 for the Board of Selectmen and Alan Jamieson, the PR 1913 for Alan Jamieson, the PR 1914 Board of Selectmen and Alan Jamieson, VW 1913 North of Boston Legal Ad, VW 1915 for Verizon Wireless. New business licenses. Do you want to read those?
Sure. So, I move that we approve the following business licenses, and I'll take them all at once, okay?
Yeah. There's a whole, just shout it out.
John DeZorman, yeah, if you have a hold, just shout it out. John DeZormu Jr., Bit by John, 89 Hanover Street, general business, personal training. Jeremy Cohen, Jaden Auto, Newburyport Turnpike. Ellen Cashman, Lalo Barron Ranch, 83 Scotland Road. Zachary Lewis, Lewis Antiques and Logistics, 1151 First Street. Michael and Kate Duffield, Newbury Kayak and Canoe, 291 High Road. George Joinatis, Plum Island Bicycle Rentals, 4 Plum Island Boulevard. All American Automotive, 61 Main Street. Jane Valpone, Valpone Towing Service. Elizabeth Woodworth, Lizzie Soap, 19 Downfall Road. Daniel Palenskar Building and Remodeling, 172 Elm Street. And Elizabeth Moulton Cowie and Martha Moulton, Surfland Bait and Tackle, 30 Plum Island Boulevard.
Motion to approve all.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
No town administrators report. Is there any old business?
Not on the agenda.
Citizens' concerns? There are no more citizens?
Martha's here.
I'm a citizen.
Are you concerned?
No.
Do you have concerns?
No correspondence. Review meeting minutes for January 8th, 2019.
Motion to approve is read.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to sign warrants?
Motion to sign warrant.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting updates?
Yeah, we had one veterans meeting last Thursday night, and we approved a one-year contract for the VSL. Other than that, it's just general business.
Very good. I went to the Massachusetts Municipal Association meeting last weekend, and I found out that the governor's budget comes out on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And Karen Polito said there's gonna be an additional 2.7 increase to aids to cities and towns. So
How much?
2.7% over last year, which was good. I also learned that, I went to the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association annual meeting, and they were talking about school funding. And they went on to this whole spiel about Jeffrey Wolfson is the Deputy Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and he went into this big spiel about school funding to try to demystify the budget, the foundation budget formula. And there was a few other people there that spoke, and at the end, he said, do you have any questions? And I stood right up, and I had my little pamphlet that I got from Brian Forget, and I made a somewhat passionate speech saying that the trend for school districts like Triton is, that have declining enrollments, is a negative funding from the Commonwealth. It's unsustainable moving forward. Triton is an average school district with a $40 million budget. Newbury, Raleigh, and Salisbury have $20 million each. If we had to pay for that school, we couldn't do it. And it's not fair to the children of this school district and other school districts similar to the state, because it's not unique to Triton. It's big out in the western part of the state, in the Berkshire County especially, and on the Cape. And it's not fair to these towns that we have to choose between educating our kids and police and fire, and they agreed with me. And he said that there's gonna be a blue ribbon commission, hopefully, formed that will and for me to reach out to him after the governor comes out with his budget tomorrow. So, I am going to be following up with him later on in the week. And I also have I sent an email to, this Board of Selectmen member from the town of Winchester, Michael Betancourt. He's our district rep. He represents Middlesex and Essex County. And I'm gonna push him to have me help him, hopefully, move the MMA into getting this in the forefront of the governors, because what's happened is there's a senator from Suffolk County that has put legislation before the Commonwealth, and it's called the Promise Act. And what that does is that it's similar to the Foundation Budget and Review Commission's recommendations, not quite exactly, but the Promise Act promises help to education, but not for Triton. So Triton's school district is gonna get nothing, zero additional monies from this Promise Act.
That's how it was last year as well. The
Right.
governor said he was spending all this extra money
Right.
on district schools and
Right.
none of it went
Right.
to ours.
So that it helps, schools with English language learners, it helps schools with increased healthcare costs, low-income students, and some sped. So I feel for the first time that there is somebody listening, because they're going to fix public education, the formula somehow, some way. They're gonna do something. And as long as the Berkshires and the southern part of the Commonwealth and us in the Northeast scream loud enough, we'll get something. They understand it now. It's been acknowledged by the Deputy Commission. I'm gonna reach out, once I hear the governor's budget, I'm gonna reach out to Karen Polito, and I'm gonna put this on her plate, because if the Commonwealth can't be this shining beacon and have all these jobs coming in for biotech and everything else that they wanna do, and have these small rural towns slide into bankruptcy, and that's what's gonna happen. So, they're aware of it. I feel good that something is gonna happen. Plus, they're also, in addition to that, they're talking about fully funding the regional transportation piece, and there's talk about possibly additional monies coming in for charter support. I don't necessarily think that the foundation budget formula is gonna get fixed, and if it could be reopened and fixed, I don't think that's the answer. What I do think the answer is additional forms of aid coming from the state. It could be rural aid or something, some other program, because there's small school districts out in the Berkshires that have like 50 kids, and you think we're in trouble, they're worse. So something's gonna come, because eventually these school districts are gonna fall, and the towns are gonna fall behind them.
And the problem is too, it's hard for Triton not to have to augment their budget. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, that's what's gonna happen.
And they need, they have gone up most years, and it's hard not to go up.
Right, and that's what happened with, I spoke with the superintendent of the Chelsea school district. She came up and she said how she's fixing, they're doing away with regular education teachers. They're
Extra education is gonna take a hit.
there is nothing extra. I said, when I have to listen to my chair of my school committee tell me that the kids in my town haven't had an adequate budget for years, there's something wrong. And finally, I think somebody's listening. So I feel, and Brian Forget met with the legislators and a group of superintendents, and they're pushing, so it's like, it's coming from, it's like this, I hate to say it, for lack of a better word, it's like a pimple. It's coming from all different angles, and it's gonna pop. And it's gonna pop, and it's gonna throw money somewhere, somehow, and I just hope I can get some.
That's a lovely image, Alicia. Thank you for that. And right on that note, the district communication meeting will be here on the 31st.
Yes, and I hope to have more of an update then. I hope to be, by that point, I'll have the governor's money. I'll hopefully have a conversation with the lieutenant governor, if not the governor himself, and I will be able to, and I also got the MMA, the Jeff Beckwith, I got him I wound him up good. So he is gonna be looking to, within the MMA to push for this too, because,
Well, it's funny, our town stepped up to the plate with the override money last time. And, you know, it just shows you that, you know, Raleigh and Salisbury have grave concerns. And if there isn't that kind of aid coming in to fill the gaps, it's not gonna be good for anyone.
No.
well, the thing is too, you gotta remember, bless you, bless you. We may have passed an override this time, but unless something changes and additional monies coming from the state, there's gonna come a day when we couldn't override our way out of it even if we wanted to, because the town of Newbury doesn't have enough money.
Well, when it gets to be like a high percentage of the pie for your budget, you can't exist.
Exactly.
So,
And that's the direction we're going, that's the trend. So, on that note, I move to close the meeting.
sounds good to me. Is that a second? I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.